2024 is the final battle. They're going after Trump, and if they can get Trump, it means they can get you, they can get me, they can get all of us. He is standing in the way, and that can sound like a campaign slogan, but it's very true. Now we're approaching the most important battle of our lives.
Now, for the very first time in American history, a sitting president's DOJ has indicted his top political rival ahead of a presidential campaign.
When they indicted me for nothing, I said, now the gloves are off. Now we have to say if I can achieve it first. Now we're approaching the most important battle of our lives. If you fuck around with us, if you do something bad to us, we are going to do things to you that have never been done before.
Well, you told me you were drowning, I would not lend a hand. I've seen your face before, my friend. I don't know if you know who I am. Well, I was there and I saw what you did. I saw it with my own two eyes. So you can wipe off that grin. I know where you've been. It's all been a pack of lies.
If you have a problem with someone, you have to go after them. And it's not necessarily to teach that person a lesson. It's to teach all of the people that are watching a lesson.
The last time we ever met, but I know the reason why you keep your silence.
When we get back in the White House, I will totally obliterate the deep state.
The hurt doesn't show, but the pain still grows. Some stranger to you and me. I can feel it coming in the air tonight. Oh Lord, and I've been waiting for this moment for all my life. Oh Lord.
When we get back power, I don't really want to have peace with these people who did this to us and are continuing to do this to us. We have to turn the tables on them, give them a dose of their own medicine, and then we can even the playing field, and then we can discuss unity.
Hey, everybody, this is Patriot. I wanted to take a minute to tell you folks about a small American company that I've been checking out called Pure Tallow. And it's actually owned by a listener of my show. This is genuinely small batch American-made skincare built around integrity and intention, not mass production. Everything is made by hand, packaged in glass, and created with real care for quality and customer service. The foundation of their products is grass-fed tallow, a traditional ingredient that you've been hearing a lot about since RFK Jr. came on the scene, but it's been used for generations to nourish and protect skin. These products have no toxins, no additives, no synthetic fragrances, just clean, honest formulas for people who care about what goes on their skin. And I venture to say that everybody out there listening falls into that category. What I appreciate about this brand is that it's clearly run by a real person who actually stands behind what she makes. This is not corporate skincare. It is thoughtful, small batch work made with intention and goodwill. They offer simple products for both skin and hair designed to work without overcomplicating things or adding unnecessary ingredients. So if you're someone who values quality, transparency, and supporting American small businesses, you can check them out at bepuretallow.com. Again, that's bepuretallow.com. I dropped a link in the description, and if you use promo code PU15, you'll get 15% off of your order. This is a win-win, folks. You get an incredible product, you get to support a small American business, and my show in the process. Check them out. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Patriot Underground. Today is Saturday, June 27th, 2026. Thank you so much for joining me, folks, to discover the truth beneath the surface. As always, I really do appreciate everybody out there taking the time to listen. And tonight, after a really long hiatus, I am bringing you another Patriot Roundtable. I can't even remember when the last one was. It was probably about, I don't know, it could have been 8 months to a year ago. It's been far too long, but I have an amazing panel of guests to introduce to all of you tonight. So we're just going to go ahead and dive right in. I'm going to introduce them one at a time. This is kind of a hybrid scenario. We've got some audience members and some of my colleagues that are going to be joining us. I think we have about 10 people on the panel, so it should be an amazing discussion. So let's just go ahead and get right to it. First, we have a new face. Actually, he's not going to be on screen, but he goes by Tyler. Oh, okay. Well, I guess he is going to be on screen after all. Tyler, welcome to the show, buddy. It's great to see you. And it's always a pleasure to welcome somebody new to the Patriot Roundtable. How are you doing tonight?
Doing all right, and I really appreciate you for having me on, man. It's an honor to go on a show like this, full of just great patriots, both in the chat and in the stream itself.
Absolutely, brother. And it's an honor to welcome you to the show. And indeed, I'm very much, I know you've been on my Telegram page for a long time, and you've expressed to me the desire to want to come on and be a part of one of these roundtables. And here we are. So I'm
thank
very
you.
excited. Very excited. Welcome, brother. Next, we have an OG, really. She goes by MC. And certainly if you've been watching this series, you remember her. She's been probably on, I don't know, maybe about 6 or 7 roundtables in the past. She's a really dear friend of mine. She's been one of my most ardent supporters right from the very beginning when I started my show more than 5 years ago. She's been a supporter on Locals. She's just been a really great friend, somebody that I honestly have a great deal of respect for. So MC, it's wonderful to have you back. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty good, Patriot, and same back to you. I'm just happy to be here and to be a part of this, and I've been missing these, and I'm just so happy to be a part of this, and I just love supporting you, and I believe in your in what you stand for, and you know, the growth that we've all gone through all of these times that we're living in. And you know, that's the most important thing, is that we grow, not to be perfect, not to be you know, have all the answers. There's no wrong emotions, only wrong reactions. And we just, you know, keep going, keep growing. Thanks a lot, Patriot.
Well, I have to say, MC, you were really the one who kind of prompted me to put this together, because you sent me a message a while back and said, you know, it'd be really nice if we could do another one of those roundtables. And so I guess in a sense, you can all thank MC for me putting this together tonight. It's great to see you once again. And speaking of old friends, someone that has not been on the show for quite some time, but if you've been following me for a while, you'll remember him. He goes by Wingman. And my goodness, man, it's been a long time since I've seen you on the screen. It's wonderful to have you back here. How you doing tonight, man? Can you hear me? Looks like Wingman might be having a little audio issues there. I don't know if you can hear me or not. Give me a thumbs up. I don't think you can.
I'm not hearing anything.
Not hearing anything. Maybe try logging out and coming back on. That sometimes will help. But it's wonderful to see you. Like I said, he's been a good friend of mine for many, many years now, and hopefully we can get his audio working right. But let's just keep it rolling here. I'm gonna continue with introducing my esteemed guest for the evening. why don't we start it off?
I'm not hearing anything.
Okay, why don't you try logging out and coming back on, Wingman, and hopefully that'll fix your situation. All right, so let's go ahead and introduce somebody that I met not too long ago. It was actually on Absolute Storm. I got invited on there by the great, true Stormy Patriot Joe and Abs, and it just so happened that she was a part of that panel, and we hit it off. I actually went on her show. We did a wonderful live together, and we've kept in touch. She's rapidly becoming one of the most influential voices in the truth movement, particularly with regard to her knowledge as a registered nurse in terms of talking about making America healthy again and being able to do deep dives into so many of the developments that we've seen since RFK came onto the scene. BB McGuire is an absolute tour de force. It's so wonderful to see you again, BB. How are you? Looks like you're muted.
Oh, I guess I got to hit the mute jar already. Really excited to be a part of this evening. Thank you for having me on. And thanks for that great introduction. Awesome. Thank you.
Well, you're very deserving of it. And, we had actually had a show scheduled, and given a lot of the stuff that I've had going on in the background, unfortunately, I had to cancel that appearance on your show, but I wanted to make that right and make sure that we got a little bit of FaceTime once again, because you're truly one of the voices that I respect so much. And it's wonderful to have you here. So let's go ahead and keep it rolling with the great 8-track himself, Mark Messina. And I have to say, this is a guy who I also just kind of met by accident. I suppose there are no accidents, but I did a live show. I believe it was on News Treason. It was the Friday night call-in show where he's basically a staple. And Dave invited me on, and it just so happened that Mark was there that night, and we started talking, and we were just actually reminiscing backstage, because it turns out that Mark and I grew up in adjoining towns. We had no idea. We're a few years apart, but we have a very similar background in terms of where we came from. And we've done a couple of shows together. I'm still trying to get on the Friday night show. I know it's hard for me on the East Coast. You guys start at like 10:30. Usually I'm fast asleep at that point. But Mark, it is so great to see you again, brother. How you doing?
Dude, it's awesome to be back. But I mean, this is a big crowd tonight. Do I need representation? Should I seek legal counsel for tonight? Am I going to need an attorney and bail money is what I'm getting at. Like, where is this going tonight?
Do you have on pants? That's all.
I'm not wearing pants.
Okay.
I do not do that.
So everybody knows, full disclaimer, Mark is not wearing pants. We just hope that he does not stand
hot in
up.
Las Vegas, you guys.
If
It
he
gets
does-
hot out here.
If he does, I cannot be held responsible for it.
It's going to be quite the show.
I'm not going to pull a tube in. Don't worry.
Yeah, he's not going to go tubing on us. But, Mark, he's a man of many talents, as I often say. He's quite honestly, I think he's right up there with my other guest, who I'm going to be introducing in a moment, is the one of the best interviewers out there. You go and check out his channel, Parallel 8 Media, on Rumble, and you will see for yourself. And by the way, the actress that I was talking about backstage is Mindy Robinson. It finally. Remember that interview? That was a while back. But yeah, she was the one who mentioned where you were from, and I was watching that interview, and I was like, "Holy crap!" I had no idea. So I texted you, and we just kind of had a good laugh about that. But yeah, it's great. It's great, man. And this is a guy who, I mean, he's amazing. He's also a stand-up comedian, for those of you who don't know. So we're going to try to, infuse a little bit of that comedy into the show tonight. We can't help ourselves, right?
We'll see what we're going to do. We'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens. No expectation. And speaking of guys who have a great sense of humor, my good friends, Joe and Scott from TruthStream. Let me go ahead and put them both up here at the same time.
Now we definitely need bail money. 100% we need bail money now.
Yeah.
That answers your question, right? Joe and Scott, you guys, I always say this, we go back a really long time. And the first couple of shows that we did together, I wasn't even on camera. So that just shows you how far back we go. And we've always had such an amazing rapport, both on screen and off. Joe and I have had, I don't even know how many discussions over the phone. We really just like confided in one another and shared how we were really feeling about what was going on in the world. And it honestly, for me, it's just so gratifying to have people that I can talk to and I can trust and put my confidence in, and we can share ideas. And it's been quite a ride, man. I can't even believe that it's been over 5 years. And I think you guys came onto the scene maybe about a year into my podcast. And ever since then, our relationship has just continued to get better and better. In fact, we just did a live stream not too long ago, which was excellent, that had Lewis Herms on there, and as well as my good friend Mark, who I'm about to introduce in just a moment. So Joe and Scott, how you guys doing?
Great to be here. Always a pleasure.
I wish I was where you are, man. Are you at Matt Geiger's?
I am. It's about 100,000 degrees out though, so but it looks pretty.
Yeah, it sure does, man. I wasn't sure if you're going to come at us from the pool or whether you're going to be like up in the gazebo or whatever the hell that thing is. Usually
I like the outdoors. Yeah.
Is Matt home, by the way? If he wants to pop on, he's more than welcome.
I know he's. I think he's on a call at the moment, but yeah,
he's a busy guy. But Matt Geiger, by the way, he's a sponsor of my show. He's a sponsor of TruthStream, the best in the business for people out there who are looking to acquire precious metals, which is certainly well advised, and he can take you through the process. He can set up an LLC for you so you can hold them on your own. Matt is he's just amazing. I had him on about a week ago, so he may pop on at a certain point. So we'll see. Joe, how you doing, buddy?
Christine Geiger might float by in the pool, just so you know, she's here.
That's awesome.
All right. Yeah,
I'm good. I wasn't expecting such a turnout of amazing folks here. So not that you guys wouldn't be enough on your own, but it's great to see Messina here and BB McGuire and the other folks that are now joining us from the chats you have. So and we have one of our favorite singer-songwriters / hosts also joining us here shortly as well, I'll let you introduce him.
Oh yeah. I always have to save him for last. The man who has he's retired, quote unquote, but we won't let him actually retire because he's too much of an asset to the truth community. And speaking of good friends, right up at the top of my list, my buddy Mark, formerly, of course, of News Treason, now Fake News 7, but he's semi-retired. And Mark, actually, he and I are about as close as anybody could possibly be. We talk regularly, and he did me the honor of asking me to be his guest on his final show of Respect. And that just, I'm still kind of blown away by that, because I know how near and dear to your heart that show was, and for you to choose me to be your final guest, and what a conversation it was. But Mark is he's just an absolute treasure to the truth community. That's why we won't let him go so easily. How you doing, brother?
My wife seems to think I'm a buried treasure, but it is what it is. But did you just call me an ass? Or was that asset?
No, not an ass. An asset.
Hearing's going as I get old. And something about Mark wearing hot pants. I didn't catch that either. So, but always glad to be here. Always glad. These discussions are always fantastic. And we have so much to talk about and so many things to discuss. And it's a great panel, and having audience members on is always a great contribution, because, we sit and espouse over and over and over again, different things. And we catch a couple of lines from the people in the audience, but to hear them actually come on and talk about stuff that's going on, it makes a big difference.
Yeah, it really does. It really does. And this was an idea that, I came up with very early on, before I really had a big following. I was, back in those days, I it was like maybe a few hundred followers. I was on BitChute, and I was constantly in contact with them. And I just had the idea one day, like, wouldn't it be really cool to do a roundtable and actually have them have a seat at the table? And it just turned into something really special. And by the way, Mark actually reached out to me a little bit earlier, and there's a possibility, I think a strong possibility, we're going to have the great Kathy O'Brien also joining us tonight. So as you can see, we've got a full dance card here, and hopefully we'll be able to hear from everybody tonight. That's my aim, is for me to do the least amount of talking, which, as you all know, is not my strong suit. I tend to be a windbag, but I'm going to do my very best to give everybody the opportunity to share their thoughts and their views about where we are. So with that, folks, I just want to say once again, it's a pleasure and an honor to welcome all of you to the platform. I sincerely appreciate everybody out there taking the time to be here for what I believe is going to be an excellent conversation about where we find ourselves right now in the overall trajectory of the operation, as I often say. And I imagine that we're going to hear diverse opinions and ideas tonight, which is exactly what makes these roundtables so special, particularly for everybody out there in the audience, as Mark was just alluding to. And I also want to extend my gratitude to everybody watching out there right now. We've got people still piling into the chat. And, on a Saturday night, it's kind of a difficult time, but we do tend to have a very strong audience. And these particular shows, I have to say, are very near and dear to the hearts of all of my longtime listeners. This is one of my original formats, as I was just mentioning a moment ago. I came up with it way back when, and it started as an idea to give audience members a platform, a seat at the table, so to speak. And gradually it evolved into more of kind of a hybrid where we now have some very seasoned anons, podcasters, and truthers joining us, which only adds more substance to the conversation. So having said that, let's go ahead and kick it off. As everybody knows, here we sit. It is Saturday, July 27, 2026. We are 1 week away from the 250th anniversary celebration of our American Republic. And indeed, I'm sure we can all agree that the exposure and the reveal phase is rapidly heating up. It's been underway for a very long time now, but it's heating up with every passing day, as we're going to discuss tonight. So it's going to be absolutely fascinating to see what transpires in the weeks ahead. And on that note, I'd like to begin our conversation by having everybody just kind of weigh in, give us your thoughts on where we find ourselves right now, sort of a 40,000-foot view. I know that's 8-track specialty. That's the name of this show. And tell us what's on your mind, what's front and center for you, and that will no doubt lead us into a broader conversation, allowing us to dive into some of the specific developments that we've seen in recent weeks. So I thought we could start it off with the great BB McGuire, and we could maybe go around the panel. I want to hear from everybody. So BB, tell us what's on your mind.
Well, a lot of folks thought that everything we would see all that we needed to see by the 4th of July, or we would have nothing to celebrate on the 250th, right? And I disagreed with that position from the get-go. I think the 4th of July is the beginning. I think that what we have been observing more and more rapidly with, different narratives kind of converging all over the place is a groundwork being laid for the next phase that I think begins after the 4th of July. And so in my lane where I focus on the healthcare front, we've got a lot of fires or a lot of sticks in the fire, right? That a lot of people aren't paying attention to. We've got an executive order from President Trump telling the CDC and its advisory committee, hey, HHS has already done all the legwork. I want you guys to get our childhood vaccine schedule on a par with other countries. Now, what's holding that up is a lawsuit from the American Academy of Pediatrics, allegedly, that's holding up ACIP. I don't think it's holding up anything. I think it's timing, because on April the 1st, RFK wrote a new ACIP charter that allows him to seat that ACIP committee at any time. I think it's all timing that's holding that. In addition, we've seen the healthcare fraud just exploding. It started with Nick Shirley, showing some hospice stuff up north. Then he kind of meanders out to California. Now it's just exploding everywhere, but it's not exploding with just, hey, this is going on. What are we going to do about it? No, we're seeing the DOJ just announcing this past week indictments of over 455 people at one sweep, and over, billions of dollars of healthcare fraud. And they've already gotten back $180 million in assets. Like, that didn't happen yesterday. This is groundwork being laid. In addition to that, we have this quantum executive order. Now, everybody's going to look at that quantum executive order. It could affect military. It could affect finances. Well, I went right to healthcare. How is this quantum affecting healthcare? And it tied right into the SCOTUS decision that happened this past week on glyphosate. So we're seeing, it's all converging, all of these tentacles converging. And I think we should buckle up, because I think we've got some major, major stuff coming in the next 6 months.
Well said as usual. As a matter of fact, I was going to ask you about that glyphosate decision, and certainly we can kind of circle back to that, because my initial reaction was like, WTF, are you kidding me? But I figured you would have a much broader, deeper perspective on that. So let's put a pin in that for the moment, and then we'll come back to it, because I'm very curious to hear your perspective on that. And I know a lot of folks out there, when they saw the Supreme Court ruling on it, there were I think like 4 or 5 opinions that day, and pretty much all of them were amazing in terms of temporary protected status and on, which were all major wins. But that one in particular, it kind of got me scratching my head. So I want to dig into that a little bit more. So we'll circle back to that. So let's go. And by the way, Kathy, welcome. I just mentioned that Kathy O'Brien,
thank you,
as the result of Mark reaching out to me earlier, said that Kathy wanted to join us. And I just want you to know I've been a long-time follower and admirer of yours. And it's wonderful to have you here. So before I continue going around the horn here, basically, I know you came in a little bit late, but we're just sort of gearing up for the conversation, having everybody give us their 40,000-foot view, as we're about a week out from the 250th celebration of our republic. So Kathy, I just wanted to say welcome, and it's wonderful to meet you.
Thank you. I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, and I'm sure I don't really need to give an introduction to Kathy O'Brien for folks in the truth community. Her name and her reputation precedes herself. So it's great to have you here. It's great to share a screen with you after such a long time of being an admirer of yours. So we'll come back to you, Kathy, in just a moment, let you get your bearings. So let's go over to one of our audience members. Let me check in with you, Wingman. Can you hear us? You got your audio now? Okay, excellent. So as I was saying, Wingman and we go back a really long time. As a matter of fact, I think he was one of the original members on the first roundtable that I did, maybe the first or the second. And it's so great to see you again. So tell us what's on your mind as we sit here in late June, kind of bracing ourselves for what we imagine is going to be a very eventful summer.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm always in a state of confusion, and always trying to, look for information that'll be helpful and reassuring. I listened to some of your stuff this week, and it was kind of like you were talking about all the crazy things that are going on, and what's our role and responsibility. And forgive me, I'm not as well spoken as most of you are, but so Wingman, see, I can't even talk. But Patriot, I'm going to say some things you're going to have to kind of reinterpret what I'm trying to say.
You're doing great, brother. It's okay. I mean, we're all of us here, we're used to being on screen, and I know you are too, but it's been a long time. So, even when I've been off screen for a little while, I get a little bit rusty. So but you're doing great, man. Just lay it out for us. What's on your mind?
Well, I have had, we go back a long way, and I told you early on when years ago, I met someone who was in he was in the groups that were doing child rescue. So the reality of these things that were going on became very real to me very quickly. And it was something that I had, that I had to deal with. And you've talked a lot about that process of going through that information and dealing with it and setting us on a journey. And there was another guy that I met along the way that was seemingly part of, at least connected with some of the inside things that were going on. And he was telling me about the capture of this person, the tribunals of this and that. And he sounded like he really knew what was going on. I've lost contact with both of these people, so I'm a little bit more in the dark now. But one of the things that I ponder, and I'm getting back to your podcast that you did a few weeks ago, that talked about what is our responsibility, what is our role, what are the White Hats wanting us to do, you know, and I can't remember the exact term that you used, but it had to do with, you know, changing in us and bringing us to the point where we're not tolerating what's going on. And you know, I think we have been given some indication that these covert activities were going to produce something for us to see in the, you know, I went back and listened to the plan to save the world. You know, somebody spent a lot of money putting that information out, and it sort of gave us the idea that there was a battle against good and evil, and that we were going to experience the eradication of evil. We were going to experience the elimination of the IRS. We were going to have the introduction of free energy, cures for this and that, and so forth. And it is frustrating. It's frustrating to just wait and wait and wait and wait for these kinds of disclosures to happen, so that we can finally be vindicated and validated as to all of the things that we've been believing and trying to tell people about along, you know, all these years. And so you know, so I mean, it's hard to just kind of figure out where we need to be, what we're supposed to be doing. And but I think the thing about what you were talking about in your message was that to recognize the things that we've gone through and the changes that have transpired in us. And I think you allude to the fact that this is a spiritual journey.
Yep.
And I look at from my own perspective in my own life and how my life has changed over the last 7 or 8 years since I've started to deal with this information and become more aware of what's going on. And you know, and I think that probably most of you guys can probably feel the same way. I mean, some of the things that I'm not interested in entertainment or movies anymore. I'm not interested in music. I'm not interested in having small talk with people. I feel like my compassion for other people has increased. My love for other people has increased, and those kinds of things. And I'm interested in other perspectives of some of you guys as to how this has been a spiritual journey for you, and what has changed in your life to give in some evidence to that. You know, and I can't help but think that there's got to be something that's going to happen at some point that's going to bring everybody up to speed to where we are. Because I can't help but think that if everybody in the world was up to speed and knowledgeable about what we are knowledgeable about and what we've experienced over the last several years, that change in this world would come very rapidly. And that's what's frustrating me, is that, you know, it's so nice to talk to people like you, because my circle of contacts and friends around me they're not on the same wavelength as me, and I can't. I mean,
well,
you
know,
talk to
yeah, well, I mean, it's a common frustration that we all have. I would imagine that everybody on this panel would agree that when we get together and we have these conversations, we share ideas, and it's clear as day to us the way that this operation is unfolding, and we can see all of the evidence, all the reveals, all the comms. We can pierce right through the psyops, but then we go out into the real world, quote unquote, and we encounter our friends, our neighbors, our coworkers, etc., on and on and on. And you can't help but get the sense that people are still fast asleep by and large. Now, I've also made the point here, and I'll be brief, that as people are awakening, particularly people who are resisting the process, unlike us, where it was our natural inclination, because it's just wired into our DNA. Like when we started to wake up, we wanted to share that truth with everybody. And we came to the uncomfortable conclusion, or the unfortunate conclusion, that most of the folks out there, that's the difference between somebody who's an awakened patriot / anon / truth, or whatever you want to call us, and the masses out there, the normies, is that we embraced these truths. Even though we didn't really want to know them, we embraced them and wanted to share them with everybody immediately, and came to find out very rapidly. And that's part of the reason why we're all sitting here having this conversation tonight, that this was not welcome information, and that we were met with a great deal of hostility. But as BB was saying, it seems like here we are a week out from the 4th of July, the 250th anniversary. Sure, a lot of us had the thought that we were going to perhaps be at a very different phase, perhaps well into the justice phase or beyond that, if we go back 6 months, a year, etc. But as we've watched the operation unfold, we've had to learn patience. We've had to learn how to dial back our expectations. We've had to deal with a number of different rug pulls, if we're just being honest, throughout the course of this process. But I do think, to your point, that is all part of the spiritual journey. And obviously I could expound upon that, but again, I want to keep my comments as limited as possible. But Wingman, thank you for sharing what's on your mind. Let's continue around the horn here. And why don't we go over to Scott? What's up, brother? Tell us what your brain.
Yeah, I'm just, this has been a wild ride ever since the Epstein files handling went so wildly off course, and the Pam Bondi issues and the Cash Patel, and so the list goes on and on and on. The glyphosate thing really threw me for a loop as well, till I had some time to sit with it. But I think despite all the optics, there's some core elements here that are really rather reassuring. And I think this is a time where we're sort of meant to feel that crisis of faith or whatever, because we're meant to go within, because that's really where you find the truth ultimately. And I think that that's a big marker for a growth process for a lot of us. And then if you look at the financial side of things, particularly with what's going on with XRP, I say that because I think it's a real indicator of sound money coming into play, and freedom from the financial tyranny and slavery that we've seen. It's all happening. I mean, I'm encouraged daily. And then the other thing is, all of this wild, crazy theater corresponds with these planetary alignments and all these crazy anomalies that we're seeing. It's in the math, it's in everything. And it's almost like this script was following, what do I want to say, the God element in this. I mean, I think we're all guided by those signs ultimately, and they just keep coming and coming. And I find that very reassuring, because we're not getting any straight answers, and I don't think we're meant to at this stage. But I feel real good about where we're going. I can't believe we're in July. I think this month is going to be key. Like BB said, I think this is the beginning. So
well said, man. Well said. Absolutely. All right, let's go ahead. And by the way, you mentioned XRP. I was just thinking to myself the other day, because I've been talking about the Clarity Act, and certainly I'm not an expert in crypto, but I recognize that XRP really is the infrastructure of the new financial system. And for a while, it seemed as if the Clarity Act was going away. It was just kind of, one thing after another, more and more obstacles, more and more delays. But now all of a sudden, Cynthia Lummis is coming out and saying, no, we're going to release the Clarity Act on July 4th, which I think is very interesting. They're going to put the text of the bill out there. And if I'm not mistaken, she also said that on July 17th of all days, there's going to be some sort of I can't remember what it was, but there's some sort of a Senate, some sort of a committee meeting about it. But she said that, and there have been a number of different individuals involved in this process. Byron Donalds, I think, is one. And there have been several other people in the administration who have said that, no, we really want to get this done by the August recess. So that would be a massive indication. And a lot of folks out there are really wondering are all the delays that we're seeing and all of the seemingly endless psyops and so forth, in a sense, kind of buying a little bit of time just to make sure they can get all of their ducks in a row before they actually go ahead and drop this new system on us. We all know that the old financial system is being phased out. It's basically like analog rails. So it's going to be very interesting to see on that front. I thought I'd just pipe in with that really quickly. So, all right, let's keep it moving here. Let's go to 8-Track. Brother, what's on your mind?
Oh gosh. I really wanted to follow BB McGuire so I could just say, that's exactly what I was going to say. Life of she had the whole, like, that was like a Wikipedia right there. That was awesome. Let's see. First, a couple things. Number one, thank you, Patriot, for putting this together right now. This incredible group of kind and brilliant souls. Clearly, with Monday's activity, we are at a major inflection point in this journey. And this is a great time for you to be doing this. So I'm really happy you're doing this, and I'm honored to be here. Number two, hi, Kathy. I think it was good to see you sneak in. Number three, does this mic make me look fat?
No.
Am I all right? Listen, I'm listening to what everybody's saying. And I have to say, there was a time, I've been doing this for 25 plus years, right? Kathy's been doing this for 39 years now, right? There have been times in this movement when that line from the Green Mile was my life. I'm tired, boss. Right. And there have been many times, and just in my life in general, since 9/11, there have been times, but during this 10-year movement, I mean, there have been times, and recently was one of them. A lot of people in the movement, when they hit that, we lose some anons, they got to go away because they've got families, and, mental health is important. But, I don't have that stuff. So I stayed in the mud, and, we didn't retreat, withdraw, avoid. And somehow it switched, right? The Epstein files came out. I was expecting, like, I'm vindicated. Yay, they eat babies. Like, it made no sense. And the vindication, it's not even a thing anymore. It's been the journey, and it's been, for me, the Great Awakening is it's not what it was. I've been on a soapbox for 25 years telling everyone, watch out for this person. Watch out for that person. This is how they trick you. This is how they'll kill you. And now the Great Awakening has become very much internal, right? The words of Jesus, right? The kingdom within. And that is where I'm living now. And it has changed everything. There's like that military term, like what they call it, like extreme ownership, right? Anything that happens in your life, figure out how it's your fault and how you can fix it, right? Nothing, no victim mentality, nothing external. Always look within. And by sort of doing that now, I almost feel like, I don't want to say I'm so excited with basically the White House affirming Q on Monday and continuing to up through today. We have another Patriots in control from the White House today. That's great. But again, there's no like vindication. I'm like, I told you so, knew it. No, we all knew it. And so it doesn't matter. What matters is where society is going. And I just feel like this is why I'm so excited that Kathy is here, because the focus of so much of my content lately, when I met Kathy at Rev 17, everything pivoted for me. And I realized how MK Ultra isn't just about extreme survivor stories like Kathy or like Hope or like Lynn's or like all of the people in our community who have these stories. Everyone can benefit from the lessons, right? I keep telling everyone to read Kathy's book and write things down, right? We are all living in a fractured mind. We're all living in, like, I've seen extreme dissociation, DID, dissociative identity. We all have that to some degree. All of us have compartmentalized minds. And for me, the Great Awakening is great. It's awakening your Christ consciousness. It's awakening the kingdom within, which means unifying and integrating all of your being. And that's why today is like this panel you put together is a great metaphor, because all this time obsessing over every detail, every rabbit hole. People are like, how do you know all that stuff? Well, because I sacrificed many years with my head down and not sleeping and researching and digging. And now it's like, okay, but for what? Not for vindication, not for I told you so, not to be better than the people who didn't know, to be in a position to now, like all of us, be shepherds. The new world is coming. It is coming fast. And that's what the Great Awakening is. I love that I know Q inside and out. I love that I still have a Q at the end of 8-track. I love that it brought me on this journey that introduced me to like way more about the whole trafficking underworld than I knew. But what I love most is the people and the community healing that I'm seeing. Let's just be honest. Let's be honest. All of our shows are group therapy. All of us are in this community because we have trauma. And even for those who maybe think they had an idyllic childhood, there's trauma. There's a lot of trauma. The world puts it there. Little things parents do by mistake put it there. And that doesn't have to be malicious for it to traumatize a 4-year-old. Intent does not factor into the trauma of an infant. It does not. And we're all just trying to heal. And that's why I think it's so great that you brought together such a diverse panel. No echo chamber. I'm super excited to see where this goes tonight. And for me, the honor of this was to realize all of my true flaws and my true trauma and the things that it's great that I have all these new skills because I was hyper fixated, hyper vigilant, and, had all these great coping mechanisms. And now I've got these skills, but now it's like, what do you do with them? How do we help the community? How do we help the world at large? How do we help everyone heal? And so I'm here for it. I'm super honored to spend tonight with you guys. So thank you for making this happen, brother.
Oh, wow. That was amazing. And I couldn't agree with you more in terms of what you said about, I mean, a couple of different things. You mentioned the vindication aspect, and this is certainly something that we've all had these thoughts and these feelings about, well, projecting into the future, like what's it going to be like when the truth finally comes out? And all of these people that thought we were crazy and all these people that alienated us and made us feel like we were absolutely insane, that actually in many ways, I know I can only speak for myself, but that drove me to get into this community to begin with, because I had nowhere else to go 5 years ago on the heels of COVID and January 6th and the stolen election. And to me, it's like my hair is on fire. I can see it all as clear as day, and nobody wants to listen to a damn thing that I have to say. So that in a lot of ways, my journey began, even though I always recognize what you said, which is this is a spiritual journey. And I talked about that right from the get-go, but there was this element, and I think, and it's not to suggest that any of us are wrong for feeling this way or desiring that vindication, which I think is going to be the natural byproduct of what comes out eventually, whenever, however the timeline goes. But the vindication element of it is kind of more of a manifestation of ego, and it's less of the deeper you get into this process, the more you come to realize that it really is a spiritual journey. And we were not put in this position so that we could point to people and say, you see, I told you so, you were wrong, I was right. That's exactly what we need to transcend. That's really what ascension is all about. And you made such a great point on there. It's more about the acknowledgement that we were all, knowing that we were always right, and knowing that we were always rooted in that deep spiritual belief that despite the world thinking that we were crazy, we knew what the truth was, and we refused to back down from it. There is an element of that transcends the ego and gets more into the spiritual. It's more just about, it's not really, and I told you so. It's just wanting people to acknowledge the truth and being able to get up to speed with the rest of us so that we can collectively heal. I love what you said about healing and trauma, because I've said multiple different times that that's ultimately going to be the greatest gift on the other side of all of this. It's not going to be about, I mean, sure, there's a new financial system. There's going to be all of these new health modalities and hidden cures and just an incredible future that awaits us. But to me, the most satisfying thing is going to be being able to heal, not just personally, but also in terms of all of our relationships. And what this evil cabal has done has driven us away and caused this massive divide between us and the people that we love. And that healing is going to be the sweetest part of the victory, in my view. So 8-track, as always, brother, you nailed it. And you mentioned Kathy. And so I'm just going to go ahead and go over to Kathy. This is going to be really my first time again, being on a show with her. It's a great honor. So Kathy, tell us what's on your mind as we approach the 250th anniversary. For somebody who's had so much experience over 30 years being a whistleblower, being someone who's just so deeply knowledgeable about MK Ultra and trafficking. Anxious to hear your take. Oh, you're still muted. Kathy, you're muted.
There we go. I graduated at the bicentennial, and was absolutely immersed in MK Ultra, thrust into a White House Pentagon level, absolutely torturous robotic MK Ultra mind control. And I saw the bicentennial celebration of freedom that had nothing to do with anything I was experiencing whatsoever. And as we're moving now into the 250th anniversary, when we've got so much awareness that has risen, we're in the midst of a mental and spiritual evolution. We're waking up. The Great Awakening is real. It's already past critical mass. We've got the victory. We're there. I'm so excited for what's to come at this point, because I really feel like this 4th of July is going to be a pivotal point. I'm also excited about the possibility of MK Ultra hearings actually coming about this time on the 30th. They were postponed on May 13th, and then the Tulsi Gabbard's office, of course, was then raided, and MK Ultra documents were confiscated. The CIA is really scared of this information coming out. I don't know. I've been talking about it for over 35 years on MK Ultra, CIA, MK Ultra, mind control and healing from it. And yet it seems at this point that the information is almost fresh and new, like people don't even know how to connect the dots to see how deeply rooted this is, how the swamp is not draining because of these roots of corruption that run so deep, that have to be removed. We've got to start connecting the dots, seeing how deep this goes, see what the plan was, how this globalist agenda has been manipulating the minds of a global population for generations now and dumbing us all down in an attempt to align us into compliance and align us with their artificial intelligence. I know from my experience in MK Ultra mind control that without free thought, there's no free will. If we don't have our God-given free will, we lose our soul expression. Without soul expression, we have no discernment of truth, no compassion for each other, no ability to even care to connect those dots. We lose all that ability. Most of all, we lose our ability to go within and align with the divine within and gather that strength of the human spirit and the infinite power of love. Remember who we are and why we're here, and start living our life's purpose. Ultimately, the mind control agenda is a spiritual warfare. It's one where we have been born and blessed with the victory. We just forgot because we're so busy, distracted, outside ourselves all the time, waiting on big government to fix it for us. And look at all the people now who are frustrated with President Trump because he hasn't done this or hasn't done that. And in fact, the first thing he said was, I'm giving power back to the people. I'm giving power back to you. And people don't even know what that means. It means it's up to us. The swamp doesn't drain from one person at the top, it drains from the bottom. It's up to us to drain it from the bottom up. That's how it's going to go. That's how it happens. It takes all of us. And it ultimately, then, in that regard, it takes a great awakening, a spiritual awakening, a spiritual evolution. And that's the time that we're in right now. We've all been blessed with the ability to heal. That, like you mentioned, Mark, of course, writing out trauma, writing out fear, writing out anything that's immobilizing us activates the critical analysis part of our brain, gives us, opens neuron pathways. Mind control shuts them down. We need them open back up. Components of mind control are trauma, our brains freeze and fright, and sleep, food, and water deprivation. We're working 9 to 5, 5 to 9 to put food on the table that's bioengineered, genetically altered to starve our brains, make us compliant, water tainted with chemicals. All of that are important for people to understand, because knowledge is our defense against mind control. It's why this knowledge has been censored under national security. It's why secrecy has been reigning supreme for all these years. It's suppressed the truth that makes us free. So this is an amazing time for this truth to finally be coming out. MK Ultra is the thread weaving through all of all the problems that we're facing. When we understand the MK Ultra factor, we're going to see how it's infiltrated every sacred aspect of our society, our school systems, and above all, how the child sex trafficking that I was thrust into as a little bitty child has in my lifetime become one of the most lucrative businesses on the planet. How did we let that happen to our children? How did we let our children be trafficked and harvested? MK Ultra mind control. No wonder the CIA is scared. They are scared that we're going to figure out what this plan has been to dumb us all down. That when we imported the formula for mind control into the US through Project Paperclip in the wake of World War II, we immediately put in the 1947 National Security Act to keep it all secret. Again, knowledge is our defense. And then we put the CIA in place to carry it out and start eradicating governments around the world, all national sovereignty, to sell them out to a globalist agenda. And the CIA was certainly doing it right here in our own country. Our eyes have finally been opened to that. We've got a president who has opened our eyes to that, and whether we agree with everything he's doing or not is irrelevant, because if we don't agree, it's causing us to think. The point is, it's a time of a great awakening. So I'm excited. I'm hopeful that my testimony will be heard this time in MK Ultra hearings. Who knows, national security is still on my case. I was asked to submit MK Ultra documents to take my testimony, condense it, put it into bullet points, which is hard to do. Of 30 years of MK Ultra robotic mind control and 35 years of speaking out against Bushes and Clintons and other perpetrators. It's been, how do you put it into bullet points? I don't know. But I was doing it. I was compiling that information when I was slammed with a tornado on June 1st. And that tornado hit only my house. It came out of nowhere, it literally came out of the blue, slammed my house, shut down my communications for a long time. But whatever distraction, whatever caused the weirdness of that particular tornado where no one else was even affected, whatever caused all that, the point is, I will not be silenced. And I have never been silenced. I'm going to just keep speaking out, because right now is such a pivotal time. It can't be because I have new information that I'm being censored and my communications shut down so much. That can't be it, because I've been saying it for so long. But I think it is the timing. You know, it's the timing. This is such the pivotal moment. We're right at the verge of taking back our country, taking back our personal and national sovereignty. And wow, what an amazing time to be alive and to be able to contribute information to that. I really appreciate each and every one of you here. This is so amazing. What a powerful group of people, and we've all got the same point, that the spiritual evolution that we're in, we've already won. We were born with the victory by design. So it's time we claim that victory and eradicate this darkness once and for all. Shine on, everybody.
Wow, well said. I would not be wanting to go next after that, Kathy. You really nailed it. You knocked it out of the park there. And my goodness, I know I keep saying I'm going to try to keep my comments limited, but as you were talking, you just brought up so many absolutely incredible points that tie in directly to what's already been said. You know, the frustration that we have with all of our friends and neighbors, all the normies out there. Sometimes people fail to recognize. I mean, you have an intimate knowledge based upon your past experience of human trafficking and sex trafficking and MK Ultra. But as I've talked about on previous shows, that at a certain point, MK Ultra went beyond just simple experimentation on individuals. It went to the masses. I mean, they figured out how to do this at a mass scale, and in so many ways, that's the reason that we find ourselves in this position where people are just locked into their into the matrix, and they spent decades and decades and countless billions, trillions of dollars hitting us with these silent weapons to keep us dumbed down. Like you mentioned, that the poisoning of our water, our food supply, the air, the chemtrails. It just goes on and on and on. That ultimately they could get us to this point where we were constantly distracted, and that's the reason why, despite our best efforts, and certainly despite our great president, and despite the white hat military behind him, we're still struggling against this this almost seemingly impenetrable wall where people that's been constructed over many years by as the result of this expansion of MK Ultra mind control to the masses, and that's in so many ways what we're trying to overcome. And you also you put it very very succinctly. I mean, we are the plan. At the end of the day, it's not just going to be the white hats. It's not going to be Trump and the white hats riding in on their silver, on their white steed, saving the day. They're laying the groundwork to enable humanity to rise, to enable our consciousness to rise. But at the end of the day, the responsibility is on us. So I could go on, but I'll leave it at that. Amazing opening segment there. So let's keep it rolling here. I know we've got so many people. At this point, I can't even keep all of you on stage at once. I do apologize for that, but I promise I'll give everybody a chance. Very inspiring, Kathy. Thank you so much. Let's go over to another audience member, Tyler. Of course, Tyler is new to the panel. I don't know if you've ever done a podcast before, Tyler, but very curious to hear where you're at, what you're thinking about, maybe comment on some of the things that have been said so far.
Well, first of all, thank you again for everyone for having me on, and great, all of you, just great things you've all been saying. My favorite definitely has to be what Kathy said, because absolutely this MK Ultra that we've all been subjected to over the last longer than I've been alive. I'm 32 years old, so I don't even remember 9/11. I was in a bad place back then, but I'm more, I also agree with. I'm stumbling over my words.
Okay, man, just relax. You're good. You're in good company. Just speak your mind.
Thank you. To answer your question, I do have a podcast that I do stuff on, and I've been kind of grilled a couple times because I ask, I sometimes request people to rate out to me. I've decided I'm not going to do that anymore, just because I feel like I've been told that's a rude thing to do, and now that I think about it, it's probably right. Not really a good thing to do. So, I'm very thankful for anyone who's done it for me. Like you did, BB, as well, and you too, Mark. You guys are great, and all of you are great. Really, a lot better than I am. I've only been in this movement for about maybe 2-3 years now, since I can't remember the exact day I joined, but I know that the main thing that got me into Q was Mike King's work, as well as a video that Dave from News Trees had made called the was it like something about 10 proofs of Joe Biden being a fake or something like that, where he delivered some data points, like an hour and a half long, showing
10 proofs that you're watching a movie.
Oh yeah, that was a classic. Yeah, that's still pinned on the channel, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, Mark, okay, so can I call you Mark and then him A-Track, because it gets a little confusing?
That's why I changed my name on the screen, just to make it easy for the show.
All right, but also, Mark, thank you so much for all the work you put through on Channel 17 with Dave. Your show Respect really hit home for me, because it's one thing that I love this community, but one thing that I've always not liked is when people go around calling each other a black pillar or a panican just because they have a slight concern or a slight bit of an issue with the way things are going, or with their current state of how where we're all at the moment. It's like, personally, I just don't feel like that's a reason to go around calling each other names, or it's like you always say, respect. We can agree to disagree, but show respect. And that's one thing that I've always tried. And I'm guilty of being a little argumentative sometimes, once in a while myself. So I got to try to catch myself. But I try to keep what you say in mind. You know, it's like always show respect, even if you disagree. If only the normies could do the same thing, that would be great.
Well, there are a lot of us out there that don't do it yet, but we're getting there.
Absolutely. What else did I say? I don't want to speak for too long because I know that there's other people that want to go as well. But how should I put this? You know, my journey through this whole thing. Would it be okay if I mention how I got into the truth movement in general and what kind of like quote unquote red pilled?
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely.
Thank you. So I was always apathetic toward politics because I'm a millennial, and I never really back in my school days I never really was into God or anything like that. Not that I was against it or into Darwinism or anything. I was just more apathetic than anything else. It was the same thing with politics and economics and everything else. What changed things, and please don't laugh at me when I say this, is do you know a Japanese anime?
Yes.
Yes. So I still do, but I've always watched shows that just always had kind of like an inkling to me, where it's about like government conspiracies or deep state kind of plots about people that are, you know, hiding behind the scenes behind government officials or behind banking establishments, basically saying and really running things, and that got me. And then one day it was after Trump got elected in 2017, and one thing got me thinking, what if this could apply to real life as well? I don't know what triggered it. It just got me thinking. This could be real life as well. So I decided to look into 9/11 because it was the 16th anniversary. And then I watched I watched the entire broadcast of CNN, Fox News, NBC, ABC. Like there were each like 8 hours. I'm sorry, I had a lot of time on my hands. But then something just didn't click with me. I'm like, something seems wrong here. It's like they seems like I didn't know much about 9/11 before that. So then I looked at it. So then I thought about it. How did they all just seem to come to the conclusion that it was this guy named Bin Laden? And how did they seem to know everything right from the get-go? Because then I look at Wikipedia and I'm like, oh, this is basically the official story. We know right from the first 5 minutes of the second plane hitting the tower. So then I looked further and I found a New Pearl Harbor on YouTube, 5-hour documentary. That was my first ever red pill documentary. Then I watched JFK to 9/11. Everything's Rich Man's Trick by Francis Richard Connolly. And then later on, I got as I got more and more into the truth movement, I discovered Mike King through his World War II works, which is how I got into that field, the bad war. I'm a subscriber to his as well, so I read every one of his books. Great writer. And then it got me thinking. You know, I was never into the Q stuff that he would post because I always thought that I was one of those people that thought, oh, Q's a psyop, Operation Trust, yada yada yada. But then I realized I like everything else that he does. So why am I being so discriminative against the Q stuff? I should be a little bit more open-minded. So then I checked it out, and then I watched some of his broadcasts, and then they came across News Treason, and I saw that video I mentioned earlier, 10 proofs you're watching a movie, and you know it just clicked with me. I'm like, this is definitive proof. You cannot deny this. Like, this is not up for interpretation, that this is proof that you're watching a movie. And so it just went from there.
You muted that.
I was going to say, well, everybody knows I have a long history with Mike King, and certainly I've had him on my show now we've since taken a bit of a hiatus, but I have the great respect for Mike and the education, excuse me, that he's provided me with, and indeed as an extension to my entire audience about the real history as he sees it through his lens is pretty compelling. Absolutely. And so Mike is an incredible resource, somebody that has done a lot of made great contributions to our truth movement. So Tyler, I appreciate that. And you've given us kind of a little bit of a background into how you got red pilled and your journey here. So it's great. It's great to have people in the conversation who can really, in a sense, talk about their own story and remind all of us in the process, you know, what was it that led us here? And indeed, all of us have our own stories, and they're different in terms of the details, but ultimately it's the same basic story, right? We all just kind of had that moment where we pierced through the veil and we could see that everything that we were taught, everything that we were told maybe not be a wholesale lie, but certainly there were a lot of things that were bare minimum omitted in terms of our understanding of how we got here. So I really do appreciate you sharing that with us. So let's continue on here. That we still got a few more people that we haven't even had a chance to talk. Haven't had a chance to talk. We're about an hour and 10 minutes in.
Sorry, Patriot. I just wanted to mention one quick thing, and that's that
Sure,
unfortunately, Mike King's Amazon page has been officially nuked a couple days ago. They nuked it again.
Oh, did they? Okay. Yeah, I
Yeah.
know for a while there they banned the Bad War, and there were, I think his book about the Holocaust that they let his other books up there, but they didn't allow those two. So now you're saying they took his whole channel down?
Yep. He made a video. I mean, he in one of his newest videos, he's asking about that. Like people can donate to him and all that.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna get in touch with Mike, and I know I've been getting all types of people saying to me, "When are you gonna have Mike King back on?" This and that, and certainly, we just taking a break right now. But at a certain point, Mike and I are sure to get together again. And he's been very supportive of me, of some of the things that I've been going through in my private life. So nothing but love for the great Mike King. All right, so let's continue on here. Let's go to Mark, brother. You haven't had a chance to really pipe in yet. And then we still got to hear from Will, from MC, and of course from my good buddy Joe. So go ahead.
Wow, a lot of stuff that's been covered and spoken about. Where to begin? As far as my 40,000-foot view of what's going on, there's, as I just said, there's a whole bunch of stuff. First thing I want to address is having had Kathy here. And I'll do this plug real quick because it's important and it's upcoming. As she said, June 30th, they're supposed to have these MK Ultra hearings. There's been a little bit of resistance from Representative Luna's office. And what they're trying to do is have a call-in campaign, have people call in to Representative Luna's office and try to entice her into hearing Kathy's testimony. I added a little slide if you could put it up. There you go. If you want to it takes you 2 seconds, give a call on Monday morning, call Representative Luna's office, either in DC, 202-225-5961, or her office in Seminole, Florida, if you happen to be in Florida, 727-610-3980. So give them a call and see if enough people call, maybe they'll say, you know something, I guess there's enough backing behind this that maybe we should listen to her testimony and see if it's any different than what we heard back in the 90s. And let's move forward with this. So that was a plug. Thank you. I definitely wanted to get that in there.
Yes,
and look, Kathy was a great turning point in my life in doing this. You all know how much child trafficking is important in my life and all the work that I've done with it. And Kathy's a huge, huge part of that. And people have to start to realize the things that have gone on and the things that are hidden from us and have been hidden from us that are much, much, much more important than a lot of the things that we spend our time worrying about. You know, we're told many times that it's the children that will unite us. I'm not so sure that's necessarily the story, but anybody who is a parent, a grandparent, how you could not be stricken by this sickness that's out there for all these years, for all these, you can't even say centuries, all these millennia, it's been going on since the beginning of time. It has to stop and we have to do something about it. That's my soapbox there. Now let's get back to the 40,000-foot view. I have to kind of agree with what Bibi said at the very beginning. A lot of people do look at the 4th of July as, oh, this is going to be it. You know, everything's going to be revealed. No, it is going to be a beginning. I do believe very, very firmly that things will be revealed on the 4th. I think things that are important to the impetus of this movement will come out. I'm not going to even take a guess to predict what they might be, but I'm pretty sure that some reveals will come out on the 4th. But again, it's going to be strictly the beginning, and we're going to move forward from there. And there's a lot of things happening. And the second part of it, for me, that I've noticed a lot. I broke my own promise to myself, and I've been watching more mainstream media than is healthy for any sane person. I've been doing it purposely because the things that I've been seeing, to me, and it should be to most people, have become so blatantly obvious as to what they're doing. When you watch just the primaries the other day, and you see this swarm of lunatics and their positions and the manner in which they present themselves and the information they put out there, I don't care how far to the left, how progressive or anything else X amount of the people in this country have become. Simple fact of the matter is that if this isn't a form of a modern day sitcom, I don't know what is, because there ain't no way in hell that any of these people are for real. They wouldn't even be for real in 1960s Russia, or in 1960s through the 90s Cuba. It doesn't go that way. But these people are listening to it and they're rallying around. You got one guy with a Nazi tattoo. You got another one who's, who wants to have Osama bin Laden's son running with him, and just all these stupid things that are making it so obvious that they are presenting to you in real time the pending demise of the Democrat Party, and overall allowing them publicly, which is what it's all about. You can't tell them, you got to show them. Allowing them publicly to say, look at me, I'm a jackass. That they had a commercial from one guy who was sitting in a colored chair and then gets up and dances and does a thing, look, I got a letter. What is going on? And this is going on network news. This is going on all of your, on alternative news and even on Fox, they're making fun of it. But the rest of it, people are actually sitting and looking at this, and there's X amount of people out there still who look at it and say, yeah, this is my stuff. Even though they're putting down Obama and they're putting down Hillary and they're putting down Bernie and AOC and this and that and the other, because they're not as far to the progressive left as they are. So they're making it blatantly obvious, but yet there are so many people, and you and I, Patriot, and Joe and Scott have discussed this numerous times, that there's still X amount of people who sit there in front of the screen and go, like they did back from the days even before I got into the business. And this is the wake-up call that we need. We need people to start, take that smack away from the TV for a second and go, whoa, what's going on here? This just can't be real. Start to wake up and move forward from there, because when it comes to where this is going, especially as we approach the midterms, and I think the midterms are going to be a joke anyway, because I think that, not because the white hats have it under control, but I think the white hats have it under control, period. It ain't going anywhere. But just to show to these people, look, all of the things that you think are freedoms, what they're talking about is not freedom. There is no free lunch. And Mamdani, or as I like to call him, my madman, has shown the people all of those programs are falling to crap because he can't get the funding. He can't get cooperation. And now you got that idiot Nancy Hochul, Kathy Hochul, talking about, how they're going to have to raise taxes and do this, that, and the other to try and support these programs. New York, California, and most of those quote unquote blue states are blue because of the big cities that are in them. They're not blue because they're blue states. the majority of the people in those states are conservatives, and they are red, truly red states. It's not going to fly. They can talk a great game, but I think even the people, from my hometown in New York City, these people are looking at it and saying, first of all, how did this jackass get in? I know I didn't vote for him. I know a whole bunch of other people who didn't vote for him. So something was on the fix here. Something's not right. And with all of the anti-white, I will never use that term, anti-Semitic, all the anti-Jewish rhetoric and all the anti-Christian rhetoric that's gone around in the city, and the way that they're pushing the agenda that they're trying to push. All of these things are out there showing people, no, you know something? This is kind of a bait and switch. They showed us something good in the beginning that we hoped for, but no, this just isn't going to fly. So I think that what's being put out there is really, wake up, people. Wake up. It's coming. It's coming to a city near you. So let's start waking up and doing things. And that's where I see the overall view. I'm not going to get into my entire thing, but that's the overall view that I've got with this.
Well, as usual, Mark, you laid the table very well, and just like with Kathy and with A-Track, I mean, my goodness, and with BB, I could probably talk and do commentary for a half an hour on some of the things that you said, but you really it raised a central question, which is something that has been posed to us, and I think it's been something we've contemplated all along, which is we know that the white hats are in control. All right, that much has been made clear. We certainly know. I think they're raining down the comms on us like never before, as A-Track mentioned a little while ago. But then there's the question. I mean, Kathy brought up a lot of aspects, I guess you could say, to the flip side of the coin, which pauses that central question of where does the movie end and where does reality begin? And is all of this insanity actually waking people up? Because I'm sure all of us would agree, despite what you said, and I totally am on board with that. And I think the evidence bears it, proves it, that most of these quote unquote blue states are only because of the inner cities, the big cities, I should say. But nevertheless, there is a massive mental health crisis that we're facing in our country right now. I don't think anybody can deny that. And you've got, I mean, as ridiculous as the movie gets, and this is one of the areas that I personally struggle too, because we can see it. They're just dialing up the volume more and more. They're making it more and more crazy, more and more insane. And yet there's these like huge portions of the population that are going, yeah, I resonate with that, And it's like you've got people showing up. My goodness, we've all seen the videos on social media, these furries showing up at these massive parks dressed up as dogs and walking around wagging their tails and sniffing each other's butts. And I mean, it's just like it gets to a point where you say to yourself, like, how insane do the white hats have to make it in order for people to actually go, holy shit, I don't that's insane, that's nuts. And it seems like the more they dial up the volume, the more crazy they make the movie. In a lot of ways, there are some people who are just getting seeped more and more into their programming. It's like because they see this and they're like, oh yeah, this is the direction that the country's headed, and so forth. And it raises that question. We've got a mental health crisis in this country. We've certainly got an apathy crisis, and Kathy talked about that as well. This is all the byproduct of the mass MK Ultra programming. And of course, the deviancy of society. And part of it is, it's like they're showing us the evil. They're showing us the agenda, but yet there are so many people that are so far gone at this point as well. At what point do the scales start to tip in the direction of sanity once again? Because I would certainly agree with you that the majority of this country, and indeed the majority of this world, is not completely off the deep end. But the people who don't have that deep-rooted mental illness, who don't resonate with this stuff, they also have that apathy crisis that I was talking about as well. Like, at what point are people going to actually stand up and say, enough is enough of this bullshit? And in a lot of ways, that's sort of in how I've pivoted in the direction that I have, which is, yes, I believe we're watching a scripted movie. Yes, I trust the president and the white hats. Yes, I believe that patriots are in control. But to what degree do we have to take more of an active role to push the envelope more toward, like, not just sitting back and expecting that everything is just going to go ahead and get resolved in due time, and actually taking more of an active role in demanding the justice and demanding that more be exposed on a wider scale. And it gets into a number of different categories about, using, we all presume that the white hats are in control of the mainstream media, and using that tool perhaps a little bit more aggressively to get to prompt people to action. Because, and I've said this going back to the very beginning of my show, that there, whether we like it or not, whether it's a palatable truth or not, the reality of the matter is that most of this country takes their cue from what they believe to be the voice of authority. And for so many people, that's like they're not going to recognize, they're not going to acknowledge it until the mainstream media actually starts talking about it openly and honestly. And still at this point, we have what I believe to be the illusion of the mainstream media of old, designed to do exactly what you're talking about, which is to push people away and push people to gradually ascertain their own information. But it does get into, I think, a philosophical debate or discussion about at what point are people going to actually start really waking up, right? Because, I mean, and that's the question. I know we probably have different viewpoints on that, but when I look around and I see, our friends, my friends, neighbors, family members, etc., I wish I could say that 6 years later, I mean, or 5+ years later after I started my show, that the needle was moving in the right direction. But these people are still very much seeped in their old mentality. So my view on it is like, it's a combination of using the mainstream media as a tool more effectively and more aggressively to hasten the Great Awakening, to get these people to finally see and acknowledge the truth. And also, of course, there's the justice element of it as well. And I've said this many times, is that regardless, people have mentioned the Epstein files, right? That's come up in the conversation so far. It's come out that they were eating babies. Okay, but do you see anybody? I mean, do you see the masses affected by this in any significant way? Right. So my view on it is that part of the apathy, the MK Ultra programming, in order to break that, you actually have, people need to see justice. They need to see people being held accountable. Like, they can hear about this stuff, but then when they don't see the mainstream media reporting on it, they look around, they don't see anybody else really riled up about it. They just kind of go about their business, and they sort of tuck it into the back of their minds. I mean, Q told us that crimes against children unite across party lines, if I'm getting the drop correctly. And I still believe that to be true, but it raises that philosophical question of, why is it, despite all of the reveals, and they've gone pretty far, talking about beef jerky, talking about grape soda, talking about all this stuff, it's out there. And yet here we are, and we're still, in a sense, waiting for the masses to catch up.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure, go ahead, Mark.
Because I feel like you said two really important things with this panel. I feel like I want to know what everyone's take is, because first you said, when are people going to really wake up? And then you said people need to see the justice. So I kind of want to decouple the two, right? Because I want to set a bar. What does really waking up mean? Because there could be some Q stuff in there too. The end won't be for everyone. I'm just really curious. So, like, starting with you, obviously, like, what does really waking up mean? And I'm dying to know what everybody else, like, what's the bar? Like, eating babies and being like, that's cool, that happens, or is the bar somewhere in between?
Well, I think for me, the easiest way to answer that question, when I say, like, when are people really going to start waking up? When we get together on a panel and we sit down and we start talking about this, and we start sharing our stories from our own personal lives, where, like, oh my God, my mom and my dad are asking me questions, or all of a sudden I'm hearing all these people talking about things that I've never heard before. When there seems to be, I guess what I meant by that is a transition from, like, the things that we talk about on our podcasts, when is that going to start bleeding into the mainstream? And I guess, to me, it's not an easy metric. I mean, how do you really measure that? I guess in a lot of ways it's subjective, but the impression that I get most often, I mean, certainly I can only speak from my own experiences, but even the people that I talk to, is that after all of this time and after all of these reveals, they don't notice any tangible differences in terms of
Right.
consciousness of the masses. I guess that's what I meant by that.
But so maybe this is a question for everyone. Like, when you say like the stuff from our podcast trickling out, I might argue that it has already. So like I look at it like this. I look at a concentric set of circles where the center is the core. And then you've got a circle outside of it, a circle outside of it, a circle outside of it, and somewhere on the far end is like the ultra normies. The circle in the middle, we're not even that. We're like the second, maybe third tier. The first tier is like the Chans, right? And I think that's why Q used 4chan, because it's not about whether they know more or less. It's about a certain like level of autism, really. I mean, let's be honest. Like, we're all autistic as fuck. Let's be honest. And at the very core, the Chans is the perfect seeding point for new knowledge for the outer circle. Because at the Chans, everything's a LARP. So if you survive the LARP, you make it to the next sphere. So somewhere outside in the next one or two, depending on how you want to define this, it's like we're there. So once the knowledge got out, we said, okay, this is real. Let's run with it and dig it. And then you've got another layer where we've got these sort of normie MAGA influencers, many of which are getting exposed right now. Okay. Now, they were the gatekeepers for the next tiers, which lead to the various levels of normies. So everything has gotten out. But like, to your point, there's been a roadblock, right? The paid influencers. So who knows what this influencer exposure is going to be? But will that open it up? And then everything that we're talking about now, well, it'll make it's like the game of Operator. It's not going to make it at the level we do. But as long as they understand the basic concepts and they understand the evil of the world and the deception, then maybe that's enough. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's a fair point. Absolutely. And certainly there's a case to be made that information, I mean, it's like, I'm not sitting here saying that like none of it's been effective. What I'm saying is that in the everyday experiences of most of us, and I don't know, maybe your experience is different, maybe BB's is different. But people have, I think, on the sort of, the grassroots level within the truth community, have that sense of frustration that that all of the things that have come out so far don't really appear to have moved the needle in terms of mass consciousness.
Yeah, for me, I'll just give my benchmark in case anyone's curious. My benchmark used to be like, that my dad would like accept like survivor stories, like the truth of Kathy O'Brien. Now, my benchmark is if my dad opens a Coinbase account, I won. Like if he puts $10 into XRP, I'll feel like of his own, not like, hey, just buy me some. Like if he opens a Coinbase account, I feel like victory. That's how low my bar is.
But is that, I mean, okay, that's funny, right? But I mean, that's the thing, is like we all had these grand expectations, I suppose, when we first got red pilled, and you never have any real knowledge of how the plan is going to play out on what timeline. I mean, we've all sort of accepted that, but there are certain points where you look back and you say, all right, well, it's been X amount of years, and are we lowering the bar in terms of our expectations? Was that like real? Was that a joke? And what is that? What is that indicative of? And I don't want to go back and forth with Mark here and monopolize, but I guess I'm just kind of like shooting around both sides of the coin here. So, Joe, we haven't heard from you yet, and then we still have Will and MC who haven't spoken. I know
BB has a quick question. Go ahead. She just put her hand up.
No, I just wanted to say just to kind of comment on what Mark brought up, the idea of really waking up. And where's that bar? And then you talked about all of us being kind of weird and autistic. And I think that's the key, because I think we're all a bunch of goofballs to begin with. Like we're all a little odd. If you ask any one of us that have like embraced this movement, we're all kind of black sheepy, socially awkward people, right? And in that, I innately, I think, have humility. What I see and what it blocks most folks is a lack of humility. because they can't admit, for instance, you were talking about, like, for gosh sakes, they're talking about eating babies. We can't even get people to acknowledge what the DNI just put out about Fauci and biolabs and gain of function and COVID origins.
Yeah.
Because in order for them to even begin to look at that, or even start to go, what? Because all of our awakenings started with a question, what? Then they have to acknowledge the fact that, because I don't think anybody on this screen took a COVID vaccine, did you?
Negative.
Guess what? We've got millions that did. And in order for them to even begin to acknowledge, then they have to have enough humility to acknowledge, oh crap, I was wrong. And I don't think they can.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they can admit that they're wrong. And so they shut down. So then any new information beyond that, they can't even go there.
Right.
We want them to go to all of those other places. We can't even get them to acknowledge COVID.
But something,
I would agree. I would agree with that. But the question is, what's the remedy?
I don't know.
See, I look at it a little differently, because, as you've heard me say a billion times already, people, especially the normies, people who watch mainstream media, et cetera, have very bad short-term memory. You saw it after 9/11. You've seen it in a whole bunch of instances. And whether the white hats have control of the media or they don't, facts being what they are, they're still operating under the same rules and the same premise that they have for a long time. If it bleeds, it leads. And what is the big story today is not even a thought tomorrow. And if you don't keep, first it was Epstein, and Epstein was a big deal. But you look at the general population, who the hell is Jeffrey Epstein? They brought in P. Diddy. Everybody knows who P. Diddy is. Now that's a problem. But that didn't last long. So now everybody's forgotten about that. They bring out certain stuff, like you said, eating babies. That's your foul ball. The pitch came in. You had the chance to knock it out of the park. You fouled it off. Never spoken of again. And it's a problem, because all of these people, including all of us, were brainwashed. And we were brainwashed into believing the crap that they put out on the nightly news, the crap that the priest rabbis and everybody else put out, all the stuff that our parents told us, et cetera, et cetera. All of these things were brainwashing. And now the only way to brainwash out of it is the same way that we got brainwashed. Wash, rinse, repeat. Wash, rinse, repeat. Wash, rinse, repeat. And we're not doing it. We're not doing it. We're one-hit wonders. And that's the part that's got to stop, and that's the part that's got to change. If people are going to start to realize and start to wake up, they can't just hear it once. They've got to hear it and see it over and over and over again until they finally get sick to their stomachs.
Yeah, and they can't actually turn away from it. That's the thing. I mean, we've been talking about the white hat strategy for a long time, and it makes a lot of sense because there's so much disclosure, there's so much information, and they've been sort of we always use that metaphor of like the chef in the kitchen, like putting things on the front burner and then taking them off and then putting something else and so forth, which I think is useful and effective in terms of narrative seeding. But I also agree with what Mark said, and this is what I was alluding to before about the being willing and able to use that. If we assume that the white hats are in full control of the mainstream media, and I have very little doubt of that, then that's a tool that's constantly at their disposal. So it raises that question of, and I think Mark nailed it, which is if you put it on the front burner with the population that we have that has the attention span of a hamster, right? And not only that, you also have the quote unquote mainstream media, the illusion of the mainstream media of old, so that it doesn't break the fourth wall, so to speak, in the movie. But if you have them continually basically saying in so many ways, don't worry about it. Nothing to see here. Nothing to see here. Nothing to see here. And I guess that's the modality of the whole thing, is to get people to break their programming and saying, yes, there is something to see here, and you're not telling me the truth. But the question is, how long is that going to take? And if you're, because it's almost like you need both. You need people to break their own programming with the mainstream media. I get that. But at the same time, like what you said, Mark, there's that was the tool that was used, along with all the MK Ultra we've already discussed, to brainwash them in the first place. So to reverse engineer that process, one would think that they would have to be subjected to this information literally like for days, if not weeks, if not months on end.
Right.
As opposed to just giving them a dose and then pulling back and so forth. And look, I understand both sides of it. I've talked for years about the strategy of, like, and Q laid it all out. Crumbs are easy to swallow. There has to be, this is a military precision approach to gradually leading people out of their brainwashing. And, again, I think there's lots of cases to be made that it's been effective in certain ways, but there's also the flip side of the coin, which is, as long as people are only seeing a little snippet of it and then it goes away, they stay still and they still have the illusion of the mainstream media and their old programming. It's very hard to move the needle significantly in the direction of mass awakening, mass public consciousness. But okay, so Joe, we're doing like an hour and 40 minutes. The floor is yours, dude. Go ahead.
Well, first of all, I went to Panama thinking I was going to a Van Halen song, and it was not. So I actually turned down a show with 8-Track and Lance Shuttler because I was traveling. So I would love to be able to make that up at some point, because I was very honored to be asked to be on that show. As far as what's going on, I think whether people are into sports or not, the World Cup is doing a beautiful job of showcasing that Europeans feel like they've been very lied to about our country. And that's been a really cool thing to see. So that's one thing I wanted to bring up. And then you just can't make up that in Seattle last night, they had Iran versus Egypt, but also it was Pride Night, and both teams requested to not have celebrations. And of course, both FIFA and the city said no. And so, I don't think there was any huge events that had happened, but it's just, you can't make that up. I just think there's so much going on in Washington State that is here to red pill people. So that's one thing I wanted to say. But as far as what I'm seeing, I'm just going to read a couple posts from our X account. One is on Andrew Colvitt's page. Representative Byron Donalds just went nuclear on the U.S. Senate, failing to pass the Save America Act. He literally started off with, "The Senate sucks. I just want to come out and say that." So, I think that there's things that are starting to come to the surface that, and like Mark was saying, they need to be on repeat. But I think we're starting to see things, like the Flag Day, Trump's birthday, June 14th, Michelle Obama's a man. I wanted to see some big things happen before July 4th. And I think there's things that are really starting to culminate to the surface. So, and then there was a couple other posts that, the Mike Lindell, Dominion dropped their case. That's something else that's pretty big. And then you've got, I like to call him John Michael Bolton, had pleaded guilty and is now a felon. He agreed to pay a $2.25 million fine. So I don't know. I'm just seeing that there's a lot of things in the works that, as far as what my take on it, I'm feeling a lot better now going into July 4th, that there's some things happening that on a grander scale that I think are getting the normies to at least start thinking about things. And like I said, I think it's been really cool to see the experiences that these Europeans have and other people have had in the United States at these soccer events. So it's been beautiful to watch that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, let me, instead of commenting, let me just go to our other guests who haven't had a chance to say anything yet. I know this is kind of the downside of having a large panel, but let's go over to MC. You've heard a lot in the past hour and 45 minutes. And again, my apologies that it's been so long.
It's okay.
But go ahead and tell us what's on your mind, maybe some reactions to some of what you heard tonight.
Well, I kind of throw wrenches in things at times in these. So anyway, thinking of 250 years for me, 250 years of the current United States that we have. I think there's more questions than answers for me, probably for everybody. Something is keeping this going for sure, to have 250 years of what we've been experiencing. Of course, it's just kind of gotten worse and worse as we go. And I love, Patriot, how you said, even if at some point, you said on one of your shows, even at one point, if Trump becomes a fall guy, that's okay, because really it's all about this, good versus evil. And I do believe in the white hats. I don't know exactly how much control they have. To me, it's kind of hard to tell, but there's so many things that have happened that it does really look like they are more in control than what they were in the past, for sure. And I just always hope and pray that, I always pray. I set my intentions on world peace. Like every day I pray for world peace. And I love what Wingman said, that it's so, depressing at this time in a lot of ways. Talking to normies it's just nuts. I mean, you have to just keep your mouth shut around them most of the time, because you end up in an argument or something. And especially with religious people, which when I come on here, I talk about religion a lot. And I'm sorry to hear about Kathy's house. I heard about that, and her daughter, I think. Anyway, I just felt so bad about that, Kathy. I'm so sorry to hear about that. And anyway, I just I think of I write things down, so I'm just kind of going over what I wrote. But I love what was said about being the black sheep. I wouldn't say I'm black pilled, but I am a black sheep for sure. The things I bring up and stuff on comments and things, and these roundtables at times. And I kind of wanted to just kind of give a little bit about my background, since I wasn't going to bring this up, and I'm not saying aliens are real or anything like that. I have no idea. But I do remember, and when I was young, like 6 or 7, something like that, I do remember possible abductions. And like I said, who knows? But it was something. I don't know if it's aliens. I don't know if it's bad military. God only knows. But I racked it up later in life as just demons, because I became basically a Zionist Christian in my 20s. And so I just, that was just all demons. But when I really started thinking about it, and thinking about I thought it was dreams and stuff like that, it was possible abductions several times. And I do have an interesting blood type. I don't know if that plays into it. I have no idea. But anyway, I remember being carried by what I'm wondering was a gray. And it's just really, I know it sounds like a crazy story, but it really, so when I started waking up, 6 years ago, almost 6 years ago now, those are the things I thought about. And I'd never thought about this stuff until I started waking up. And then and it was actually Simon Parks that I was listening to when I started wondering about abductions type stuff. And but I remember those kinds of things, and I remember seeing something out my window, when I was that age, and possibly like a ship or something. And these things just really make you wonder when you have an experience like that. And I don't have any answers to any of that stuff at all, but it really did make me question my my Christianity and my belief system at the time. And I'm not saying that Christianity is wrong. That's not what I'm saying. But the mainstream Christianity, I really wonder about. King James had very questionable traits. That makes me wonder. And he was all about kings of the time, and it does make you wonder. And it makes me wonder about just everything, about archons, about the demiurge, about the Book of Enoch, and Thomas and Mary Magdalene, and the Nag Hammadi texts, the 13 books they found in clay jars. And anyway, I'm sorry, I just kind of wonder about these things, and I heard something the other day. I'm probably not quoting it right, but the ancients, they believed in staying neutral. And I'm thinking maybe this is wise at times, to stay neutral not in your solid beliefs, but in the things you don't really know about yet. Kind of be a little bit more neutral. I'm not saying to be like the ancients, but they do believe that, or they did, to be more neutral. And, I think this is the time for it. Honestly, it's the time. And, and we're not going to be right about everything in this crazy realm, but, we just need to be honest about it to ourselves. First of all, we need to love ourselves and love others as we love ourselves. I totally, believe that. And just keep growing, keep learning. I know Will is going to put, the spiritual part into this. He always does. He does a lovely job with it. There's just so many questionable things. I believe God is in all humans. Everyone that is a human. Now, I don't know about NPCs or, any of that stuff. Who knows? But I do believe that all humans have God, that we're not, all these horrible sinners, like just, going to hell and all this stuff just because we're questioning. That is something that I believe was just shoved down our throat, in Sunday school and all that stuff. And, don't question anything. Don't question God, when, the Bible contradicts itself. And I just wanted to throw something out there. I was wondering if anybody else has heard that the earth could possibly be, in the years ahead or whatever, broken up into 4 or 5 regions instead of it being, countries. Maybe have all the Western world, whatever, one region or whatever, and the United States be over that. And I'm wondering if anybody else has heard about that, like possible regions instead of countries anymore. So that's pretty much all I had to share. But I just appreciate this panel, and I just love hearing from everyone and keeping an open mind. And I love how Patriot is just really keeping his mind open, and you guys are the greatest, the pioneers of this first round of patriots that are really standing for what's they believe is right. It's the toughest go around, I believe, is this first go around. You know, I think of pioneers and how they crossed the country and all that. Well, that was really hard on them. A lot of them died. And sometimes I think of that. I'm like, I mean, we've seen a lot of the patriots already die, you know, and stress is a killer, and that too, and health wise and stuff. And I just appreciate being part of this in some small way. And I love y'all. And I just wanted to share those things. And I wasn't going to share that story about
this
the
is
abductions, but I'll tell you that there's something there for me, and I don't know what it is. And I'm just waiting, and I'm just like, okay, there's got to be more to this. Okay, so I'm done for now. Thank you.
All right, MC, thank you so much. And again, you know, this is an open forum, and we fully recognize that it could go in any different direction. There's no rules. There's no, you know, there's no guidelines. People can say whatever it is that's on their mind, and that's the beauty of it. It opens up all different aspects of the discussion, and which are all relevant, by the way, to the Great Awakening. And that's the thing. I mean, sometimes we just focus on the political developments. We talk about what's happening geopolitically, domestically here. We talk about the Q operation, but let's also not forget that there is a much wider, much broader scope of knowledge that's quite honestly, it is becoming more and more mainstream. Anna Paulina Luna and then certain members of Congress have talked openly about the Book of Enoch, and we've had Tim Burchett talking about it. We've had, Tucker Carlson talking about fallen angels and demons and things along those lines. So gradually they're seeding more and more of this into the consciousness of humanity. And again, like you said, we're pioneers. We're so far ahead of the curve. Sometimes we forget that. And we, you know, at least I do. And I conflate where I'm at with where the rest of the general public is at. And as, you know, BB and some others have talked about tonight, we have to remain conscious of the fact that we've been front loaded with so much of this knowledge because we've sought it out that eventually, and I do believe in our lifetime, we're going to get a lot more clarity on some of the questions that you raised. So I'll just leave it at that for now. And I want to pass it over to my good friend, Will. And Will wasn't here in the very beginning of the show tonight, but he's certainly been there since the beginning of the Patriot Roundtables. As I always say, I give him credit because when I started my show, he was actually the first person to reach out to me, send me an email and say, you know, I really appreciate your work. And we developed a friendship back in my early days of BitChute before I was even on Rumble. So I have great respect for this guy. And as MC said, Will's particular slant is always on the spiritual. He has a great, tremendous knowledge of the Bible and different translations, specifically what certain words mean, what they don't mean. So Will, like I said to MC, I mean, we've laid out a whole bunch of stuff tonight. Give us your thoughts. I just want to give you the floor, and I'm not even going to pose a question to you. I'm just going to give you the floor. Tell us what's on your mind.
Well, thank you, Patriot. You hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay. Thank you, Patriot. As always, it's an honor to be a part of this panel, and I take it very seriously. That's why I emailed you and said, I'll be driving when you start. I won't be here, but I'm going to get in as soon as I can.
Are you home in Maine?
I'm still in Maine. Yep.
You're in Maine. Okay.
Well, back in Maine. You're right. I was down in Texas for a while. I'll be back down there soon.
Yes, sir.
A lot of ministries I've gotten involved with. But anyway, I just want to add, I'm going to keep it simple so you can get on with the show, and I'll interject as other topics come up. But I just want to add how exciting it is to see it being recognized that our ascension is not anything external, but internal, where we go deeper within. That's our ascension. And we enter into that place where God resides within us. That's the ascension. It's inward, and it's limitless how far we can go within us, because that's God's realm. As it says, we're the temple now, and that's where God resides. And on whatever distractions we experience that distracts us from the divine within us are precisely those things we need to remove. And we talked about a number of things already, and I won't get into them all, like mainstream media. That's really the awakening isn't cognitive, it's spiritual. Thank you, Patriot.
All right, short and sweet, but poignant as usual. Absolutely. So, all right. Well, I'm going to do the best I can because I want to give everybody an opportunity to share their thoughts. I thought maybe we could circle back to BB. Earlier in the show, of course, we talked a little bit about the whole glyphosate SCOTUS ruling, and I thought maybe now would be a good point to sort of pivot back to that, right? As I mentioned, there were a number of opinions that came out. I think it was a few days back, and of course, within the Patriot community, we're all basically celebrating all of those amazing SCOTUS decisions, and it's yet a further indication that the Supreme Court is under white hat control. But then there was this ruling about glyphosate, and I guess in a larger context as well, there's been I guess a certain amount of criticism about Make America Healthy Again, how that seems to, it started out like great guns in the beginning back in January of 2025. And whether or not it's true, it seems to be the perspective of a lot of people that it's kind of taken a back seat. And you have a unique perspective on this. So I wanted you to maybe speak a little bit about that glyphosate decision and just talk a little bit about the Make America Healthy Again initiative and how you see that progressing. And then we'll get his thoughts as well.
Well, thank you. I can't talk about SCOTUS, and this is what I've learned over the course of several months. I can't look at anything without looking at that 40,000-foot view, because everything is connecting. And if you only look at just the SCOTUS decision, then you miss all of the other, which gives you a better understanding. So the first thing I'm going to start with is the quantum executive order. So it was back in 2018 during Trump's first term that he signed a law about quantum. And then we have, if we believe this to be true, then we have this fake presidency where Trump is still in control. What was happening between 2018 and 2026? Well, we don't know the answer to that. But this past week, he signed another executive order, essentially putting guardrails down, and this is what's going to happen, right, regarding quantum computing. So I listened to that press conference, and what I'm finding, and this again is my opinion, it's the way I'm looking at things. When they have these press conferences and they come out and they say we're gonna, and we're gonna, and we're gonna, we saw it with the pharmaceutical companies, we're gonna, it's already done. So when I watched that press conference about quantum, I was like, oh my gosh, they're already putting this into play. Well, what gives me evidence for that? Well, we've had 2 physical exams of our president since he's been in office the second term, where they're utilizing artificial intelligence to evaluate his EKG and give us the fact that he's got a cardiac age 14 years younger than his chronological age. They're using artificial intelligence to evaluate the president of the United States. So there's one little data point. Now back to the executive order. So if we think about quantum computing, and I'm going to make this real simple because I'm kind of a keep it simple kind of girl. Quantum computers work in qubits. A normal computer puts data in zeros and ones, right? And it's linear. And a regular computer can only look at a data point one at a time, just really, really fast. Well, quantum computers look at qubits, Q-U-B-I-T-S. So they look at millions of possibilities, zeros and ones together, millions of possibilities all at once. So if we think about the SCOTUS ruling and the quantum executive order, I wrote down some notes because we just did a whole show on this last night. So Roundup's main ingredient is glyphosate, and glyphosate is the #1 herbicide used worldwide. But the full formulation of Roundup includes surfactants and additives. Roundup is only 40% of the Roundup, or glyphosate is only 40% of the Roundup formulation. So what was the ruling? Plaintiff John Durnell used Roundup for 20 years. He got cancer, and he won a $1.25 million settlement in Missouri on a, this is important, failure to warn claim. Monsanto appealed that, arguing that federal law called FIFRA, which is basically our insecticide law, that law blocks state claims. So the SCOTUS decision ruled that Missouri cannot require Monsanto to add a cancer warning because the federal law already requires Monsanto to use the EPA approved label. And the EPA has repeatedly found that there's no cancer risk from glyphosate alone. So SCOTUS did not rule on whether or not Roundup causes cancer. It was a very narrow decision about federal labeling requirements. So the ruling in favor of Monsanto was just basically they ruled that Monsanto complied with federal labeling laws.
Mhm.
Now, if we link the quantum executive order to this, it's all based on the EPA concluding that glyphosate does not cause cancer. And that conclusion that the EPA based that on may have been based on ghost-written studies written by Monsanto employees. One big one just got retracted in the last couple of months. So the EPA that's now being led by Lee Zeldin, here's interesting timing, is currently conducting its registration review of glyphosate. It is a legally required reevaluation that occurs every 15 years, and that's this year. It's due out in October. So the quantum sensors that the executive order talked about, if you watch that press conference, they talked about quantum sensors. If they are utilizing quantum computing and they're reevaluating glyphosate, these sensors could actually see if glyphosate disrupts mitochondrial electron transport down at the cellular level. Quantum magnetometers could show whether or not glyphosate is causing like a reactive oxygen species in human cells. And if that's the case, then EPA's position that it's not likely to be carcinogenic collapses. The other thing that has never, and I'll pull this up, and if you want to play it, this
Sure.
is probably one of the most powerful videos that we have. This is, hang on, I got to find it. This is RFK talking about the difference between Roundup and glyphosate, if you want to play that.
All right, let's have a look.
Shouldn't be talking about glyphosate. We should be talking about Roundup. And if you read all of these documents that we've gotten from Monsanto and see all the sneaky stuff that they do, one of the most fearful things for them is that somebody is going to do testing on Roundup. Because even in their most private emails to each other, they're talking about nobody's ever tested this, and we know that the formulation is much, much more toxic than the glyphosate. Because the formulation has all these surfactants in it and adjuvants in it that are intended to allow the glyphosate to slip through the bark of the plant and through the coating of the plant, and they allow also those same chemicals also enable that molecule to penetrate the blood-brain barrier and get into the human system, and they're toxic themselves. And the synergistic toxicity is something they've been able to keep the regulatory agencies from ever looking at that. The only thing they ever test is pure glyphosate. Nobody ever gets to test Roundup. And of course, Roundup has many different formulations, but they're all much more toxic than glyphosate.
Interesting.
So when you think about quantum computing and them utilizing quantum sensors to then evaluate glyphosate alone and Roundup formulation together, because that's the Secretary of HHS. That's the guy that's working with Lee Zeldin, who leads the EPA on trying to get rid of PFAS in our drinking water. These guys are working together. They're not going to show their hand until their ducks are lined up and they've got all this. But I think that we're seeing the seeding, because not only that, this past week, June 25th, Trump signs an EO advancing regenerative agriculture and strengthening American farm resilience. And in that, they're talking about quantum tech allegedly only being in the research and early development stages. I don't believe that. But quantum computing solves complex optimization problems like resource allocation for water, fertilizers, pesticides. The quantum sensors will offer ultra high sensitivity for soil fertility, nutrient levels, crop stress, disease detection, often before visible symptoms, and environmental monitoring. So they're putting this into finance, into war, into agriculture. We don't believe that this is going to be used by the EPA in their reevaluation of glyphosate. The SCOTUS ruling was only about the labeling, and all of these lawsuits have been about a failure to warn label. None of the lawsuits against Monsanto have ever addressed whether or not the Roundup formulation actually causes cancer, because it's never been tested, but it's coming.
So that's very interesting. So if I'm understanding this correctly, and I want to go around the panel and have everybody to comment on this, you're saying that the quantum computing, basically moving away from the old binary system of ones and zeros and getting into the quantum system of qubits, is going to enable the full exposure of Roundup, in a sense, like taking the spotlight off of glyphosate itself and the issue of labeling, but actually putting it directly, squarely on the formulations, all the adjuvants and
well, I think it's a twofold process, because they have used the word glyphosate and Roundup interchangeably.
True.
And
yes.
and that's what has become so confusing for the public, right?
Yeah.
Glyphosate is the main ingredient in Roundup, but in the Roundup formulation, glyphosate is only 40%. We don't know what all those other additives in the formulation are, or what the synergistic toxicity, because if you're going to go to the EPA and, I've got flour, I've got water, I've got yeast, I've got salt, I've got sugar. If I put them all together, I've got bread, right? If I take one of those out, then the bread doesn't work. So what happens is they go to the EPA and they go, here's the flour, and they test the flour, or they test the yeast, or they test the salt. But what they haven't done with Roundup is test all of those ingredients together and how they're working together with glyphosate, like you just heard RFK describe. Those synergistic chemicals are pulling the glyphosate in and making it potentially more toxic. And for us, that the issue for us, particularly with Roundup, the whole formulation, it is not just being used as an herbicide sprayed on a crop as the crop is growing. They've started using Roundup as a desiccant, and that just means a drying agent. So once the crop has been harvested and is sitting in a barn, they're spraying the crop with Roundup so that it dries faster, and then it goes directly to processing. So we're getting this dose of this Roundup formulation being sent right to processing plants, being used in flour and crackers and bagels and all the things that we eat. And then we can't figure out why our guts are a mess, because we don't know what this stuff is or what it's doing to us. But I have faith in RFK. The guy was an environmental attorney before he was HHS secretary. That was his primary focus, was environmental stuff. He won massive cases. In fact, he was one of the lead attorneys on the first Monsanto case against Monsanto for Roundup. So I don't think he's going to let this go. I think he's a dog with a bone, and I think they need to, he has pushed and pushed and pushed gold standard science, gold standard science. He is not going to come out and just start talking about whatever unless he's got every detail T crossed, I dotted. No way that anybody can wiggle out of this. Now, potentially, it's just a thought, potentially, could they discover that glyphosate alone is not a problem? Potentially. Is the glyphosate in formulation in Roundup the problem? Potentially. This is data points we don't know, but I think they're going to be utilizing or already have quantum computing to give them all of the information. And why do I think that they're using quantum computing? This past week, I kind of briefly talked about this fraud that is just exploding everywhere. If you think about the scope of just this one last story on the fraud, think about this scope. It was 455 defendants, over $6.5 billion in false claims across 56 federal districts, 45 states, and over $180 million in seized assets. You think they're doing that with regular computers? I don't.
Fascinating. Okay. Well, that you answered one of my follow-up questions, which was, okay, well, if it's really just about testing Roundup as opposed to isolating glyphosate, a couple of things occurred to me. Number one, which was, why would that require, or would it actually require quantum computing, or would they actually be able to do that if they had the will to actually test Roundup? And I think you kind of addressed that. And then the secondary point that came to mind was talking about all the adjuvants and the things that make Roundup specifically so toxic and carcinogenic. That same basic model could be applied to so many other things like vaccines, for example.
Correct.
Right? So maybe they're
Correct.
establishing a precedent here.
Yeah, now you're seeing how it can build. Yeah. And at the same time, we have I talked about the fact that there's this executive order out there about, hey, we want you to evaluate these vaccines. None of those vaccines were tested against placebo. What if they can use quantum sensors to look for things like aluminum adjuvants in vaccines affecting human cells, crossing blood-brain barrier, the same way you're thinking about glyphosate crossing the blood-brain barrier? Are you following me? Like, I think that this can just explode.
Absolutely.
So it's just very interesting to think about, and I'm just watching.
I got a question.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
BB, do you see that with this quantum technology and the way they'll be able to examine all the ingredients in anything, as Patriot was saying, it could potentially expose this was purposefully done in a certain way to cause effect on mankind?
Ooh, that's a loaded question. I don't know the answer to that. I think that I was researching today for the show, and it was May a year ago, May of 2025, that they talked about the fact that I think it was HHS and the FDA put out that they were going to be trying to come up with a federal definition of what ultra processed food is. And the deadline, they put out like a request for information. The deadline for that was October of 2025. March of 2026, RFK said, oh, we should have a federal definition by April. Well, we're approaching July. We still don't have a federal definition of what ultra processed food was. In the research that I was doing, I was thinking, well, if you were going to define ultra processed food, you'd have to look at processing, you'd have to look at like chemical ingredients, you'd have to look at, and if you're looking at all the chemical ingredients and additives, then you would have to start looking at all of those generally recognized as safe chemicals that have just been added to our food that the FDA doesn't even know what they are. And so my thought was, is there a delay in the definition of ultra processed foods because they're applying what I just thought about to that as well?
I have a question, BB.
I don't know.
I'm sorry, I got to interrupt real quick. I apologize, brother. I put it in the chat like 10 minutes ago. I got to jump because the Thunderbirds are leaving Nellis and doing a flyby on the strip.
Nice.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
And I got to be there for it. I didn't realize how quick the time was going to go.
Yeah, there's a lot of people on here. Well, listen, man, thanks for joining us, and we'll definitely sit down and maybe do another one-on-one in the near future.
We absolutely have to, brother. It's been way too long.
Make sure you shoot it.
All right, we love you, Mark.
I love you guys. Thanks so much.
See you, Mark.
Bye.
So I have a question for BB then, talking about ultra processed foods. Do you think this could potentially come down to them admitting about human flesh being, because it has been proven in certain foods? Do you think that it could lead to that as well?
I mean, I think that they would be able to identify what is in our food and then let us know exactly what these chemicals are, what they're doing. Again, there's thousands of chemicals. The RFK has come out and said there are thousands of chemicals currently in our food that the FDA has no information on. Because of the grass loophole, the companies could just add chemicals and just let the FDA know, yeah, we tested them. They're good. The FDA has no information on them. So, yeah, there's stuff in our food that the FDA knows nothing about.
And so it's the quantum computers specifically that's going to make this.
Potentially.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, when you think about the sensors, I don't know anything about. I'm certainly not a quantum expert. The executive order went out, man, and I just threw it out to all the AIs that I work with, and I'm like, teach me about quantum computing and what are these sensors. And then I asked specifically, and I asked Grok, I asked Ultra AI, Perplexity. Okay, these sensors. When we think about health, how would these sensors? What would they be doing? And some of the examples I got was, I'll give you guys a couple. Imagine an MRI brain scanning at 1,000 times the resolution of our current MRI, or imagine detecting cancer at the single cell level years before a tumor would develop. So ABS, and it was Paul Fleury ABS and I that covered this on the show last night that we did together. And, one of the things that he brought up was is this like the basis of the stuff that we've heard about where people talk about med beds? And I'm like, I haven't gone down that rabbit hole with med beds. I've heard a lot about it. I haven't been able to get any tangible stuff because that's what I got to look for. And, but if you think about the idea of it, then that's quantum computing is what's behind it. So imagine, I mean, if we could detect cancer at a single cell level, imagine what that does to the cancer industry. Imagine what that does to longevity and health for our nation. And that was just what, the AIs came back and said, this is what quantum sensors could do on a healthcare perspective. It goes down to the cellular level. So if it goes down to the cellular level, would we be able to look at how does glyphosate affect humans at the cellular level? Would we be able to look at how does guar gum in your ice cream affect you at a cellular level? How does aluminum adjuvant in your child's vaccine affect your child's brain development at a cellular level? It's mind-boggling.
Wow.
Hey, BB, I've got a question for you regarding the War Powers Act component of this.
Ooh.
I was infuriated with the idea that this was suddenly something under protection, and I got to really stewing about it.
Right.
And I thought, well, the biggest weapon the pharmaceutical companies have is their legal budget, and they can keep this stuff in litigation for years and years. But if it's isolated into the War Powers Act, well, now jurisdictionally, they're in a whole different path, right? So
Yeah.
they could put an end to it immediately. So I'm thinking that's what that part's about, but I wondered what you have to say about it.
The executive order is the one that you're referring to where Trump wrote about onshoring glyphosate production.
Yes.
And giving companies who are ordered by the federal government under the War Powers Act for onshoring of production of glyphosate, that they would be immune from any lawsuits regarding their production of glyphosate. I dug into that a little bit, and what they're not protected from is if a company like, say, Monsanto is making glyphosate. Okay, I'm just using glyphosate, not Roundup, but let's just choose Monsanto. If they're making glyphosate under the War Powers Act executive order that Trump signed, then they are immune from any liability related to the federal order to onshore production. What they're not free from, as far as liability, is whether or not that glyphosate is actually harmful. So the thing that we don't have, because the EPA's current ruling that's been in place for 15 years, is that glyphosate does not cause cancer. But in all of those lawsuits, there were 4 major lawsuits against Monsanto regarding Roundup. Okay. And in all of the discovery that I went digging through, there was something called here. Let me scroll up and see if I can get this. I'll read this to you guys. It was kind of bizarre. It was called the Monsanto Papers. There were millions of pages of emails, memos, and files unsealed during discovery. Monsanto was ghostwriting science. The employees were drafting independent papers claiming safety and got academics to put their names on them. One key paper in 2000 was retracted, and then Nick Hulsher with the McCullough Foundation just reported that one was retracted just a couple of months ago. Emails that were released in discovery of these lawsuits said things like, quote, glyphosate is okay, but the formulated product does the damage, or, quote, you cannot say that Roundup is not a carcinogen. We have not done the necessary testing on that formulation. That was all brought out in discovery. So that's all part of the court documents of these lawsuits. So this is going to get really, really interesting.
See, to me, the interesting part of all of this, thinking outside the box a little bit with it, where your whole story began was with a Supreme Court ruling. Allegedly, where we're headed at this point is back to common law. Jacoby and Myers and your typical victim of these food companies and chemical companies, et cetera, don't have the what with which to protect themselves and do the investigating and bring to bear all of the necessary charges and emphasis that needs to be put on all of these particulars, which these chemical companies and food companies and everybody else does have. That's why they have their own legal staff. So when you look at this and you look at the direction that they're going with trying to recall federal judges, recall a lot of the local and state judges, et cetera, to try and head back to law that makes sense and law that actually protects the people of the country. I think this is another puzzle piece in it showing, again, the ridiculousness of where we have allowed ourselves to be taken by the legal senior moment, the legal, the
lawfare.
Lawfare, and the
legalese too is a big thing.
It's not just the legalese, but it's a matter. Legalese is that's the language that's got to die. That's got to disappear from our core language. But I'm trying to think of the groups that go and they get paid to go and represent these people and put it out there.
Lobbyists.
Thank you. All these lobbyists for all of these companies, all of these mega businesses, are going to get shut down when you do get to common law and you're able to, it's a simple if-then statement. Well, if your product does this to another person and causes harm, you are liable. And you won't have all the twists and turns and legalese that's in there to allow them these loopholes and go, well, in 1943, Smith versus Monk, no, it's not going to happen. So I think a lot of these things are getting drawn in and exposed now to try and show more of the things that are coming.
Well, I think another one of the nuances of the SCOTUS ruling was that essentially they're saying that Monsanto complied with FIFRA, the insecticide law, and Monsanto labeled according to the EPA required labeling. So essentially the nuance here is that as long as you're compliant, that basically that the EPA is the stopgap, right? So what recourse will they have when SCOTUS is saying basically the EPA is where the buck stops? So when the EPA, led by Lee Zeldin, working with RFK, who knows all of that we just watched in that video, come out with all of the data that is necessary to show that Roundup or glyphosate or both are carcinogenic, what recourse will they have?
Well,
because the SCOTUS ruling basically said the buck stops with the EPA.
See, again, though, you're looking at it in present terms. I'm looking at it in the terms of going and moving forward to common law, where what is the EPA? The EPA is an agency that is given these rights. We already know that our Congress and Senate, the people who make the laws of the land, people who give the jurisdiction to these offices of the government, are under the payrolls of all kinds of people. And they are under that payroll because they make the laws and they make the rules, and they don't make them for we the people.
No.
We're not even involved in that process.
No, we're not.
And that's because we, and you hear me emphasize this all the time, we have allowed this to happen. We have allowed our employees to bankrupt our business. And they haven't just financially bankrupted, they have morally bankrupted. And that's where these people will be held highly accountable.
Yep, absolutely. Wow, this has been amazing. All right, we're at like 2.5 hours. I knew this was going to be kind of a long show because we have so many people, but I do want to be respectful of everybody's time. And certainly, I think the fatigue factor starts to set in right around this point. So it might be a good idea for us to wind it down a little bit, give everybody an opportunity to leave us with some final thoughts, and then I'll just kind of put an end cap on it. So with that in mind, why don't we go back to our friend Tyler? Certainly, since you had the floor last time, a lot of things have been laid out specifically by a great friend, BB here, who has just such an amazing amount of knowledge.
Hey, Patriot.
Yes.
Sorry. Joe is going to be taken off. Could he share like real quick? TruthStream, Joe. He's got to bounce. I'd like to hear from him one more time.
Sorry, I missed that. I didn't know you were leaving us.
Sure. No. Sorry, I just kind of wanted him to be able to say goodbye, if that's okay with everybody.
Of course. Thank you. Go ahead, Joe.
Thank you, guys. Well, I want to I don't even know if Scott knows this yet, but there's this movie that's circulating called Citizen Vigilante. And
I saw it last night.
Yeah, it's one of those movies where, the acting isn't that great. And yeah, there's a couple scenes in there that they could have done without. But the bottom line is it's reflective of what's going on in society where, basically this guy's standing up because the judicial system is completely failing in Europe. And the advantage of Rumble and BitChute is that you can take movies like this and post them on there. And I know Elon had promoted it for folks on X. But if you do want to watch it on Rumble, I think they're going to let us leave it up. But it's on our Rumble page. They've let us leave up other movies. So Rumble's a little bit kind of more under the radar, I suppose. And so anyway, people want to watch that movie. We have that up. And I just want to say it's an absolute honor to be here with all of you guys. And I did want to promote one last thing real quick. Our dear friend Lisa Schermerhorn recently released a book, We Are Quantum. And there's, including her, 37 authors that are part of it. And I was fortunate enough to be asked to contribute a chapter to that. And
awesome.
Yeah. So anyway, that's out there for people. I just find it so interesting that you got the quantum with Trump, and then you've got this book coming out. And so there's a lot of really positive, good things that are happening. And I know I was right where a lot of folks, in fact, Patriot Underground and I, about a month and a half ago, we're having a heart-to-heart about, God, we got to see some stuff happening. And I'm feeling a little more positive about stuff now. And partly it's because of the quantum stuff that's coming to the surface. So I just wanted to leave people with that, and that I'm optimistic and hang in there. And I know this is going way longer than many of us anticipated, but we are not children that are trafficked in cages. And when you have someone like Kathy O'Brien that can be positive and come on a show, like there's a lot of inspirational people out there for us to look to, because I know this is challenging, but it could be a lot worse.
Well said, my friend. Absolutely. And I'm right there with you, man. I mean, we all have our peaks and valleys throughout the course of this journey. And I suppose that I don't know whether it's one of my strengths or one of my weaknesses, but I'm very open and honest about when I'm going through those valleys. I tell people what I'm thinking and feeling. But my audience really, by and large, stuck with me through it all. And it's not just a reflection of where I'm at that specific moment, but really a larger commentary on what a lot of people are thinking and feeling at the grassroots level. And that's important. Yep. That's part of the reason why we do these types of shows, to give the audience members an opportunity to actually partake in the discussion, as opposed to just listening to all of us, deliver our commentary and our narrative and so forth, which is, of course, we love that. That's the reason why we all have platforms. But to me, that's always been very near and dear to my heart, because that's where I started. And that's ultimately where I remain. I've often said that having a platform really doesn't change anything. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm just an ordinary American like the rest of you, who cares about my country and wants to see positive things happening. So yeah, Joe, and that's also an example of how Joe and I, we have these off the air discussions, things that we don't necessarily want to discuss on air, some of our, in some of our darker moments, but that's all a part of the process. And I've embraced that. I think that's actually a strength as opposed to a weakness. I always err on the side of telling people the truth, regardless of whether the truth as I see it, regardless of whether I'm right or wrong, because I think that's ultimately what authenticity is all about. And that's what people really want and are craving, is a real authentic conversation. So, and Joe and Scott, you guys do it better than anybody. So salute you, brother. Go on your way. Happy trails. And I apologize. I'm trying to monitor everything here. I'm missing
no problem.
Chat, but thanks, MC, for pointing that out. So, Joe, we'll be in touch soon.
No problem.
Take care, buddy. Thank you.
All right. So, anyways, let's go over to Tyler. And why don't you hit us with some of your reactions to maybe some of the things that BB was talking about, or just in general, some of the things that have come up in our discussion.
Well, I'm going to be completely honest. I know next to nothing about agriculture and quantum. I don't really know much about any of it, but I can tell that it's extremely important, just because otherwise you guys wouldn't be talking about it. So it's something I definitely feel like I need to look into. And because I'm going to be honest, I've only discovered UBB recently. And I can already tell you put out great content. So I'm definitely going to give you, I'm going to check out more of your content. And I'm glad to be able to have a chance to speak with you here today.
Yeah, Doses of Deception is BB's show, and I think I can put a link in the description. I didn't do that tonight because there were just so many people on the panel. But for those of you guys who aren't following BB's channel, you really got to get on that. And when I first sat down with her, I think she only had like maybe 1,000, maybe 2,000 subscribers, and her channel is just going like up and up and up, as it should be, because clearly she brings the goods, she brings the sauce, she knows what she's talking about. So, Tyler, thanks so much for joining us tonight. I really do appreciate it, and hopefully in a future roundtable, I always love to welcome people back for a repeat of that experience. Every conversation is different, and tonight, like I've said, we've had a wide-ranging discussion on a lot of different topics, and it's not always easy quarterbacking when you've got 10, 12 people in a roundtable. I'll do the best I can to give everybody some airtime to share your thoughts, but I really do appreciate you coming out. Hopefully you'll be back again.
Yeah, thanks again for having me on. Can I say one little quick thing?
You bet. Absolutely.
I would love to be able to have the chance to be like you, to be able to put something like this together, because this is amazing. This is one of the best things I could ever be a part of, in my opinion. It's just, you guys are all great, fantastic.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate that, and I love the fact that so many people really do love that they get so much out of these roundtables. I mean, sometimes we're having this discussion. It's not until after the fact that people are like, "Oh my God, this was such an amazing experience." And that's really been the consistent feedback that I've had ever since I started doing it. So I'm going to try to make it a point to do this a little bit more often. So, and you're always welcome.
Yeah, and BB, is it okay if I ask you if you're willing to take a look at a certain channel on YouTube? Because I know that you're a health expert. And there's another person that I used to be associated with, that kind of went his own way, that's also into health. So I wanted to ask you if you would check him out and tell me what you just what you think about the information that he's providing. His name is healthfreedom.uk, is on YouTube. He's in the UK. He also talks a lot about health with people.
Yes,
So,
I will definitely look at that. Healthfreedom.uk. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And thank you again, Patriot. I'll see you guys later. Hopefully I can come again.
Absolutely. You're always welcome, my friend.
Yep. God bless.
Okay. All right. So let's keep it moving here. Let's go over to MC. Why don't you leave us with some final thoughts?
You bet. Yeah, when BB was talking, it just really made me think of all the deception especially with the children. I think so much about the children and the trafficked, the people that are being trafficked, and what do they do with the bodies? You know what I mean? And I believe they put the bodies into, the organ when they harvest the organs, and it's so sick and disgusting. And it's hard to talk about, but it just really makes me wonder what these chemicals, they call it chemicals, but I'm wondering if a lot of this is, the discarded, the rest of the human body that cannot be used, they discard that into these products, into our food. That's been proven. Into building materials, into, sometimes I wonder about my couch. They say it's leather, but there's not that many cows, It just, it really makes me wonder about these things. What really are these sick and disgusting entities, whatever they are, doing? So that, I'm sorry, but that's kind of where my mind goes with those kinds of things, those topics. And how are they going to reveal that, to the public, what's been actually going on? And I just wanted to leave it with, I believe our world is changing big time. I believe that within this next 10 years or so, we're not even going to recognize it as it is today. It will be totally different, I believe, in a lot of ways. Consciousness is changing. The world is going to change. And I just wanted to say that I'm sorry to all of the people who are still struggling out there, the audience, family members, and the sick people, the people with they call it the long COVID symptoms and stuff like that. I just feel so bad for people, whether they got the jab or didn't. Of course I didn't. But I know a lot of people were deceived. A lot of people have gotten sick and are dying, and they don't know why. And we know so many people, and it's like, gosh, did you get the jab? And a lot of them did, and they're just not healthy. And everybody's health is struggling, I think, or a lot of people, just the stress of life, and I think most everybody's having a hard time financially, I think. And I just want to say that I feel for people. I feel for my neighbor, you know, or the people around the world that are struggling with all of these ailments and with, you know, their finances and stuff. A lot of times it just makes me want to cry a lot, you know, thinking about people and humanity. And Wingman brought that up too. Like, I love my, you know, my fellow man more, fellow woman, fellow people more than I ever have. When I was in religion, I love people, and I just have such a heart for people now, and I just feel so bad for people. We're all struggling, and really, I think all of us are going to end up in a mental crisis if things don't start coming out at some point. You know, some people are stronger than others, but man, it's been tough. Just hanging on and hoping for the best and praying for world peace, like I said. And it's been an excellent panel, and I just thank you, Patriot. I thank everyone here.
Well, thank you, MC. We really do appreciate that, and you know, I know we all resonate with that deep sense of pain for humanity, and that's ultimately what drives us to do what we do. And the fatigue factor, all the things that we contend with, those are very real, and it's something that it's always a relevant part of the conversation. We talk about all the reasons that we have to be optimistic, all the things that are happening that are moving us in the right direction. But at the same time, it's been a long, grueling process for all of us. There's no question about it. But we soldier on, and ultimately we do it for the children. We do it for the future, for all the reasons that ultimately led us here to begin with. So very well said. And as always, I really do appreciate you joining us once again. It warms my heart to see people coming back for additional Patriot roundtables. So let's go ahead and let's go to Wingman, and then we'll go to Will after that, and then we'll just kind of round it out with Mark, Scott, and BB, and then we'll say goodnight. So Wingman, give us some final thoughts, my friend. Oh, it looks like you're muted there.
Sound, and I have to keep getting back in and out. So
all right, you're good. We hear you loud and clear, man.
Missed out on a lot of what people have said, but I've got the gist of it. But can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
I think I just lost your voice again. So I'll go ahead and talk. But one of the things I mentioned about the Q, the plan, to save the world, you know, there's promises in there that evil is going to be eradicated and good things are going to happen and those kinds of things. And if you think about it, the thing that we have grown up with, if you've grown up in a Christian belief system, is that's contradictory to what we've been taught. We've been taught that basically the world's going to get worse and worse and worse, and then, you know, maybe Jesus comes back, we all get raptured, and we all miss out on the worst of it. And it seems kind of funny that when I heard the, you know, when I get involved in these things, it gives me optimism and hope, because these kinds of things are the things that I want to happen. But then you have this mentality, because of the belief system that we've been taught, that this is not going to happen because the Bible says it's going to happen a different way. And so it's kind of funny how you're fighting this belief system that opposes what we want to happen for the good. And so it's really interesting. I think that adds to the empathy, or not the empathy, but the apathy that a lot of people have, because they just kind of think that, you know, something's going to come by and going to rescue us all. So it's just interesting looking at some of these things and trying to evaluate where all this is going. I really enjoyed listening to MC. She mentioned a lot of things that topics and things that I've had questions about and looked into as well. I'd like to have a longer conversation with her about some of these things, but I think I'll stop talking because I don't hear anybody in the background because I don't think I can hear you. So I may have to log off and get back on to hear what you guys are saying. But that's all I have to say.
All right. Well, thank you, brother. I really do appreciate your contributions tonight. And like I've said, I mean, the fact that you and I go back such a long way, when I see Wingman and when I see MC and Will on the screen with me, it does in a lot of ways bring me back to where I started my journey and some of the discussions that we had 4 or 5 years ago. And to see us all on the same journey is it really is, it's reassuring, that we were all brought together for the right reasons. And certainly you brought up some very poignant points about religion, about organized religion, about the way that people have been indoctrinated to think. And I believe that ultimately there's going to be a lot of unraveling of that in due time. And that part of our mission, of course, is in pursuit of the truth, is to challenge a lot of those assumptions that we were, that we had from a very, very early age about religion and about basically just being saved. And you made a really good point about connecting it to the apathy that we spoke about earlier. So well said, my friend. And once again, it's great to see you. So let's go over to Will.
Okay. Boy, so much has been discussed. Thank you, BB, for incredible insight you give. So valuable. I just want to touch base, Patriot, on MC mentioned about religion, and you did again. I had to have my own journey out of the faith system I was brought up in. And it was really my awakening to starting to recognize all of what we've been lied to about throughout the world. It all started for me spiritually and examining my own faith system. I just want to encourage everyone. It's a huge part of awakening. And of course, each one of our individual ascension within into the God realm that's inside us is to have a mindset to question the faith system that we have. And most of them are what we were brought up in. It was very hard for me when I started doing that. And it was a 10-year journey. And well, I'm still on it. I'll never be off of it. But I want to encourage everyone to even pray and ask for the courage to question your own faith system. And we're told within the Christian faith, they spoke of the Bereans, and they were considered more righteous than the rest because they did question what they were taught.
Yep.
And that's a great example. That's a great place, a foundation. We all need to do that individually with ourselves, inside our own self. Horrible plug, but my book will be out pretty soon, and it's going to address a lot of these things. Not religious directly, but as you know, Patriot, the language in which our translations were written in, and examining word by word. And as a result of that, it questions religions. And frankly, none of them are what it's really saying in there.
That's the uncomfortable truth. Yep.
Yeah. So book will be out hopefully soon. I'm just trying to save the money to finish it.
Well, you let me know, brother, when it is, and I'll be sure to promote it for you.
The last thought, thank you. The last thought is I wanted to read a scripture that relates to a lot of what we talked about. John 10:10. And you all can go read what's before and what's after that. But that says, the thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. That word destroy in the language this was originally written in, not the translations, that word kill actually means to kill as a sacrifice and offer on an altar. I'll just finish with that.
All right. Well, absolutely. And you know, we've had many discussions in the past on previous panels about religion, and specifically organized religion, going back as far as you want to look in history as being one of the original forms of mind control. And in a lot of ways, it dovetails with what Kathy was talking about earlier. That this whole paradigm is nothing new. That they've taken people's natural inclination to be obedient to God, and they've twisted it, and they've, I guess, in some ways, they've taken that concept and they've conflated it with this idea of obedience is the opposite of thinking for yourself and questioning things. And ultimately, that's really what this spiritual journey is all about. It's not a condemnation of any religion. I mean, certainly I identify myself, I am a Christian. I have a relationship with Jesus Christ, but it did not spring from me just simply going to church and listening to what the pastors were saying and tithing and doing everything in accordance with what they said, but rather it was about seeking that individual relationship with Christ.
Amen.
And seeking that, and regardless of what your religious persuasion is, because everybody knows I'm not, even though I'm a Christian, like I've always said from the very beginning, if you're a good person and you have a good soul and you care about the children, and you have humility and you have integrity, as far as I'm concerned, you belong here. You're a brother and sister of mine. It's a big tent.
I can speak on that for an hour, brother. But
I know you could, but it's really it's about
let
that.
me dovetail on one word you said: obey God. Most of the time, that's used in Scripture. The meaning in the original language is to listen with the intention of believing what you hear. It's not about doing things or not doing. It's listening with the intention of believing what you hear.
Right.
That's obeying God.
Exactly. And seeking that personal relationship and being obedient in the context of that relationship, as opposed to an organized religion or a church or synagogue or anything else where a man or a woman is telling you what you should and what you shouldn't do. That is where it all breaks down.
Amen.
But we can have that, like you said. I mean, heck, we've had that conversation multiple times. But I thank you for reminding me of that, Will. You're amazing. So thanks once again for joining us tonight. All right, let's go over to Mark, and then we'll go to Scott, and we'll round it out with BB. You're muted.
We had this discussion prior to the show, and I think what Will said is just so spot on. And when a lot of people, we've discussed a whole bunch of things tonight in a whole bunch of different directions. But when a lot of people sit back and they say to themselves, why isn't this moving faster? What's the problem? Why, we know that this is a movie, we're watching the replay. Can't they get to the end of the movie a little bit faster? A Cliff Notes version of what I was going to get into, and probably a lot less controversial end of it, is the fact that anybody who seriously believes that this is man's first go round in this realm is a fool. There have been many other times that man has been here and gone, been here and gone. God created this world that we live on and created it beautifully and perfectly with everything that we could possibly need to survive and to grow and to thrive. And I think all the other incarnations of man have come and gone much the same way that we have, until they've been on the brink of destroying everything. And God says, okay, this experiment failed. Let's throw this one away and start anew. And here we are at a point in time in what I think a lot of people have forgotten about is the Great Awakening. And it's been said before tonight, and Will stated it very eloquently just now. That awakening is within you. God is within you. The great divide that we've all been through, and this is a skipping record for me, is religion. Religion is one of the great divides in this country, in this world, more people have died in the name of God than for any other reason. But we have an opportunity, because if you just get back to God, and I'm not saying run to church or synagogue or anything else, but run back to God, run back to your inner self, listen to that voice, and you go back and you realize that he had a very, very simple plan. And it's kind of love your neighbor as you would yourself. Don't steal, don't kill, don't covet. It's a really just be a good person, like Patriot just said. And if you're a good person, that'll do it. And that covers it to the point where when you take that last breath and you've got to go and face the big guy yourself, you want to be able to say, yeah, I screwed up. I did a bunch of things that I shouldn't have done, but overall, I was a good person. If we could see ourselves just once, just see ourselves to the point where we turn around and forget all of the brainwashing that we have, forget the religious divides, forget the skin color divides, forget the gender divides and everything else, the monetary divides. And you don't have to love your neighbor, but like your neighbor. Get along with your neighbor. Help your neighbor when they're in need. Be a good person. I think that if the powers that be saw us turning in that direction and becoming good, responsible people, not selfish, but selfless, this would all be done.
Amen.
Yep. So that's my prayer right now. Will, I hope I did you proud there, but that's my prayer right now. And it's just, I'd love to see, I've said it a billion times on the air that I think that when Trump or anybody else says it's going to be biblical, what will be biblical is, for the first time ever in history of humankind, the unification of the population of the world, working together, being neighbors in a fight to wake up, see what's right, make sure that it never, ever, ever happens again, because we are the ones who allowed it to happen. And just follow God's simple rules. And we'd all be a lot happier.
Yep.
That's my soapbox. If you have any cards and letters, send them to Patriot.
Well said, my friend. Absolutely. I mean, God judges the heart first, and he knows the hearts of his people. And in so many ways, I think that's what this great awakening is all about, is getting us to see each other. And Mark kind of alluded to this, but getting to see each other in the way that God views us, to look at each other's hearts, that's really ultimately the end game of what this is all about. We often talk about what the cabal has done to us. Yes, we allowed this to happen. Absolutely. We allowed ourselves to be divided and conquered. And it wasn't just simply our generation, this goes back thousands of years. All right. So none of us are personally responsible. And that's the other thing. So when people might get triggered by that, well, we allowed this to happen. Well, we're talking about collectively. Humanity allowed ourselves, going back many, 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 many hundreds, if not thousands of years, to be gradually divided and conquered. And that's really what this is all about. It's about that unification. That's what's going to be biblical, Mark. Absolutely. And if we can, even for a moment, be able to see each other in the same way that our Creator looks at us, my goodness, the world would change overnight. So wonderful to see you back, man. Like I told you, we're not letting you fully retire, so don't get too comfortable over there. All right, Scott, you're up, brother.
All right. Well, gosh, I agree with all of these sentiments. Not sure how much I can add to it, other than to say that for those people that have really struggled recently, they all seem to be leaning in the direction of rooting for their team. They're caught up in the cult of personality, deeply personally disappointed Trump or, any one of these other figures. And people always ask me, how do I maintain such a high level of optimism through all this? And I think it's because I don't really care. I care about the outcomes, but I don't pay attention to the cult of personality. And I think that's a survival strategy in
That's
all
great.
this. And I keep religion out of my spirituality as well. I like to keep a pure channel. I think it's very important to go within. In those moments of crisis where you're doubting things and you go within, if you meditate on the question, you often get an answer. And to me, that's the clearest channel ever. So I highly recommend that as well. There's the old adage about, good times create weak men create bad times, and so on and so forth. This movement and the last, I don't know how many years, decades, certainly, probably a good bit longer than that, have produced a lot of very strong men and women. And it's been such a delight to see that and be surrounded by that and to be, so connected with everyone. I wanted to do a podcast because it was a calling. It wasn't that I wanted to do the podcast, is that I had to. And I felt like it was an act of service. But I'll tell you, it's certainly served me, especially in the way that I've gotten to know so many wonderful people and to be part of such a wonderful community. And it's roundtables like this that really remind me of that. So thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it.
I love you, brother. That was just so
Love you
well
too.
said. And honestly, I mean, as we all go through our own personal struggles, I've shared with folks, not the particulars. Some of the people on the panel tonight know the particulars, but I never get into the specifics. But as I'm going through my own and I'm listening to everybody talk about their own spirituality, it's a reminder to me, because I find my most direct connection to God when I just simply lean into him and I seek guidance. I mean, it's kind of like a surrender for me, because there's a million different things that the enemy can fill your brain with, all the different what ifs and all of the cynicism, all the frustration, the anger, and of course the biggest of all, which are the future. I mean, the unanswerable questions about the future, and that's where so many of us get jammed up spiritually. And we have this natural inclination as human beings to try to insert our own will into, in a sense, kind of come up with a control paradigm where we think we've got this under control. Or we think that we're on the right team. I think Scott was kind of alluding to that. People find a lot, and that's exactly what the cabal played into, because they knew that was a part of our nature, as a part of our tribal nature, going back to our roots. But when we transcend that and we just say, and this is where we meet God. Specifically, what I'm going through right now, and I've been in similar places in my life, but never anything quite like this. But where God meets us is in that moment of surrender, where we just say, I don't have the answers. I don't know what's going to happen, but I need help. I just need you to walk with me through this process and guide me through it. And that is exactly where God meets us. And, and that's applicable to every one of us on our own journey. And so it was just so wonderful to hear that tonight. And it was a reminder for me personally that that's really the answer as you go through difficult challenges. And we're all doing that on our own, but we're also doing that collectively. And it's the same basic principle. Just lean into God, trust, and know, regardless of, and I'm with you, Scott, as far as the cult of personalities and all the different narratives and, people choosing a lane and all this type of stuff. I mean, I get it at one level, but at a far deeper level, I think we need to transcend all of that. And I think that's ultimately where we're headed collectively as humanity. So well said.
One thing I'd like to add to that, something Mark had said about loving your neighbor really is the most important of the commandments, so to speak, or guidelines, or whatever you want to call it. But if you can find God in the eyes of the person in front of you, especially if you don't like him very much, I mean, that really changes your frequency, and ultimately it changes everybody's frequency. Time's not really linear, so let's stop being so impatient and learn what's in front of us. And I think that's a big part of it. A really big part.
Brother. Amen. We all get tied up and jammed up from time to time, and it's a part of the process. That's the other thing I have to remind myself, is that nothing that we go through is a surprise to God. Nothing, no choice that we make, no path that we go down, and there are no surprises in his eyes. He understands and knows that this is all part of our experience of being mortal, of being human, and going and living in this world. But indeed, all of us, like I said, I mean, he judges the heart first, and I believe that's why he brought all of us together on this divine mission. So, absolutely amazing. All right, BB, take it home for us.
I'm muted. I'm muted again. Okay, so I'm gonna take us all up a notch because I have a different viewpoint. So God woke me up. I'm late to the game in comparison. Okay. And I woke up during COVID. I was a nurse for decades, lost in the matrix, being puppeteered by our enemies and used to harm. And when I woke up, the realization of that first pissed me off to unbelievable levels. And then there was the massive grief.
Mm.
And I brought that to the foot of the cross. And I said, all right, you woke me up. I realized all of this. What do you want me to do with it?
Mm.
And I just kept asking and kept asking and kept asking. And a show called Doses of Deception was born. And I have to tell you guys that it is not easy. None of this is easy. I work full time. I spend anywhere between 18 and 30 hours every weekend prepping for one show. And because I'm relentless and I want to make sure that the information that I'm putting out is sauced, right? Because the Q operation taught me how to research, taught me how to sauce, and taught me how important that is. We are at war. And I think we forget that we are at war. And so I've embraced a warrior spirit. It doesn't mean that I don't get tired. It doesn't mean that I don't get fatigued. It doesn't mean that I don't go, what in the hell is going on? I'm just so sick of this. Are we ever going to see resolution? But what I embrace is these things: courage, strength, resilience, faith amid the battle, reliance on God rather than self. And I'll end with this, Joshua 1:9. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be frightened. Do not be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. Deuteronomy 31:6. Be strong and courageous. Do not fear or be in dread of them, for it is the Lord your God who goes with you. He will not leave you or forsake you. And I have hope because we have a God-centered administration who is filled with warriors. And I think there's a lot to be hopeful about. I am the watchman. I am watching to see where God is working, to see what God will do, and to help report that, hey guys, look what's happening. Look what's happening. Look what's happening. And the last thing I want to leave everybody with is that we fight or we lay down and they destroy you. So you fight for your family, you fight for your children, you fight for your parents, you fight for your health, you fight for your sovereignty, you fight for your country. You fight.
Well said. I couldn't think of a better note to end it on. BB McGuire, thank you so much. You're amazing. Everybody on this panel is amazing. Thank you to, of course, Kathy O'Brien, who left us a while back, but made an incredible impact on the show tonight. Certainly our good friend Joe, Scott's partner over at TruthStream, who had to leave a little bit early. And of course, my good buddy 8-Track. This has been an amazing discussion. Hopefully everybody out there has really enjoyed it and benefited from it. Do us a favor, and whether you're, I know Joe and Scott, I believe, are streaming. I think BB has this up on her X as well. I don't know if Mark is, but wherever you happen to be watching, make sure you smash that thumbs up button and share this information. I mean, these are the types of discussions that ultimately help sustain people through this process. And like I've said, I talked about it a little bit earlier. Coming into this as just an ordinary guy without any specific expertise in any area, that was really my aim. It was just to have to develop a community of people, which I didn't even think was going to happen in the beginning. It was just an outlet for me, but gradually that's what it turned into. But that's the role that I've always embraced, is just creating a space where all of us can share all of these thoughts and ideas and opinions. And certainly we don't necessarily agree on everything, and that's okay. As a matter of fact, I think that's one of the strengths of this type of a panel, is that we're not creating an echo chamber here. We all have different perspectives. Certainly, one thing we all know is that we're all on the same team. We're all, like BB said, fighting for the same end result. We may have different perspectives. We may have different things that we're focusing on. And as I've often said, even though we're on a collective journey together, we're also on our own individual journey. And that takes us in various different directions. And sometimes, inevitably, that's going to affect the way that we're looking at things at any given time. But that's part of the reason why we come together as one, to be able to deliver a podcast, a conversation like this, to help sustain all of you, hopefully to reflect what you all are feeling, what you're all going through. And I just am so grateful to be in this position. It's 5+ years since I started my show, and I'm still humbled by the fact that I have a platform to bring so many great people together. And for a 3-hour and 15-minute podcast, my goodness, I mean, it's incredible. And we've had an amazing audience out there on Rumble, on X. So I just want to say thank you. And I just want to salute every single person out there. I'm going to be back next week. I'm going to be having Ethan Lucas back on the show. He's got some pretty banger new products. I know Scott's shaking his head. He knows what's up. The Sorona products are absolutely incredible. And we're going to, of course, talk about the landscape as well. And I've got some other things in the works that I'm still kind of hashing out the details on. So I'm not going to announce those yet, but lots of great content to come. So thank you, everybody, one and all, for joining us tonight once again. Until the next time, God bless and Godspeed. Patriot out.
Night, everybody.